So welcome everybody as people are getting on. We are also on Facebook, and now that we're 3 minutes out, I'm going to hit record so we don't forget to do that. Hi, Ray! And so if you're watching over on Facebook, welcome. If you're here on Zoom, I'm going to remind people to do this as soon as it gets started as well. But if you want to ask questions, you can go to the chat window here in Zoom and put your question in. And for today, I would ask that you only put in questions and not comments, because we're going to be limited to a short amount of time to ask questions. And I'm going to be looking around to find them. I don't want to have to scroll through lots of "Hi, how are you?" comments. Welcome everyone. I see you getting on. Everybody, as you're coming on, you're already muted because we're already recording the session and we didn't want to have a lot of background noise, but welcome. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. We're actually waiting for our first speaker to get on. And I see him there.
Karen, can you hear me?
I can. Thanks so much for getting on, Brooke. And we're going to get started as soon as we hit the top of the hour. Okay. And so we're seconds away.
All right. Sorry. I was starting to panic. I couldn't find the link.
Oh, no.
Nothing like a little stress at the last minute.
You know, well, it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't stressful, right?
That's right.
And so we have a lot of questions that have already come in. And so it's 1 o'clock now. And so in the interest of time, because all of our segments today are a half hour in length. So welcome to our virtual tour of PA fracking impacts hosted by the Better Path Coalition. We're very happy that you joined us today. What we're asking you to do is to enter any questions that you have into the chat box at the bottom of the screen so that we can get to your questions at the end of each segment. And so please enter your questions there, and please limit your comments in the chat to questions today so that they're easy to spot, because we will have a short amount of time to get to them. Our first presenter is Brooke Leiter with Frack Tracker Alliance. He's going to provide an overview of Pennsylvania fracking impacts. Brooke, welcome.
Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. And let me just share my screen. There we go. And go to here. Whoops, there we go. Let me go back. All right, everybody can see that, I hope?
Yes, thanks.
Sure. So, well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak today and give a brief overview of the pervasive and far-reaching effects of fracking in Pennsylvania. Just a little bit about Frack Tracker. We were set up in 2010 as a project at the University of Pittsburgh. And since then, in 2012, we formed our own nonprofit organization, and we map, study, and communicate the risks of oil and gas development, both in Pennsylvania and to some extent across the country. And you can check us out at fracktracker.org. So this time lapse shows the drill out of unconventional natural gas wells in Pennsylvania from 2006 through 2019. And as of June 17th, 2020, there were about 12,500 unconventional wells that have been drilled in Pennsylvania. And just as of a few months ago, there were over 106,000 conventional and unconventional wells in the state. So think about that. That's a tremendous and horrendous, I guess you could say, collection of wells. But also, as of June 17th, 2020, Pennsylvania's unconventional wells, just the unconventional wells, had logged over 16,000 violations as cited by the Pennsylvania DEP. 16,000. And that includes spills, leaks, illegal discharges, and a variety of other problems. Some wells and well pads saw multiple violations, and the same companies commit or are accompanied by the same violations, it seems like, time and again. This map shows a portion of the state. It's centered on a liquefied natural gas refinery that's under construction just outside Wyalusing, Pennsylvania. And let me just say, this LNG plant sprawls over 260 acres in a place that was very bucolic, fields and forests. It's also next to, immediately next to a Moravian Indian historical site. And evidently, this is an area where woodland Indians occupied as far back as 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. So it's egregious in many ways. But I wanted to show, of course, the landscape of violations. But think about this. Think about how Pennsylvania has been transformed by this industry. So this is just, a snippet of a few counties. And it probably looked more like this, mostly dairy farms, woods, and now looks more like this. So this map shows wells and compressors. It shows some of the gathering line network, not all of it, because unfortunately that data is very hard to obtain. But you get the idea. In just 14 years, this has become a sacrifice zone where short-term economic gain, or really a game, I guess you could say, and it's a game where people are the pawns and the natural resources serve as the game board. But look at the impacts on our public lands. This is a portion of the Pine Creek watershed, a really beloved part of the state for outdoor recreation. So this is that part of the watershed in 2008. And this is the same part of the watershed in 2016. And you can see all the fragmentation that's occurred, whether it's from access roads, well pads, or impoundments, fragmenting the landscape. And fragmentation, it's important to note, it disturbs wildlife, it delivers invasive species, and it diminishes the quality of outdoor recreation. Forest loss also hampers the ability of a watershed to filter water, to slow it down. And also, of course, losing this forest means we lose ability to sequester carbon. Roughly 1/3 of Pennsylvania state forest lands have been either leased for fracking, or they're in a split estate situation where there's private ownership of the mineral rights. But even though there's this much drilling already, there's still probably only half or less of those leases of that fairway of development on the state forest land has been exercised. So without any further leasing, there's still potentially a lot more drilling to come, or I should say, or that could occur. Well, water, of course, is one of the resources at risk from frack gas development. Operators in Pennsylvania averaged, I want to make sure that in the past, they averaged between 4 and 5 million gallons of water per well to frack. And that was roughly from 2008 to 2012. But the numbers take off from there. And if you watch this time lapse, you'll see the shades getting darker and darker, because that means that the average well is using more and more water. in those places. So the average well or per water use per well went up to about 14 million gallons of water in 2019. And to put that into perspective, because we use these millions numbers, and it's sometimes hard to wrap our brains around it. So the 14 million gallons of water per well is equivalent to about 21 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water, of fresh water, for every single well. And we know that some of those well pads have multiple wells on them. So think about that. In total, in 2019, there were some wells, and so that's an average, that 14 million gallons. Some of the wells were using up to 39 million gallons of water per well. So I think it begs the question, sort of, when does that end? What are the limits of prudence? And another way to look at this water use issue is that Pennsylvania pumped out of the ground in 2018 for fracking or out of streams 10.9 billion gallons. So say almost 11 billion gallons of water for hydraulic fracturing across the state. That amount of water could supply the needs of 300,000 Pennsylvanians for a year. So that's just water use. But let's talk briefly about the concerns about water contamination. So exhaustive DEP file reviews by the organization Public Herald documented thousands of homeowner water complaints to the PADEP over a number of years. And those were all complaints related to fracking. And you can see on the screen, there were almost 9,500 overall complaints, and almost half of those had to do with water. Basically, something happened to my water when they started drilling near me. Now, those are just the complaints. We know that DEP has issued at least, and I probably don't even have the latest number, but at least 300 positive determination letters where they're assigning blame to the gas company to fix your water problem. So, and I like to underscore that, one person's water gone bad is too many, because with damaged water, our health is at risk and our property values plummet. So it's a huge injustice in many ways. So Frac Tracker worked with an organization called Partnership for Policy Integrity in 2018, I believe, to develop a report that looked at the use of what we were calling secret chemicals in frac jobs in Pennsylvania. And what we found was that these proprietary chemicals have been injected 13,600 times in Pennsylvania into 2,500 wells. That was from 2013 to 2017. Now, the toxicity of these unknown biocides, friction reducers, et al., remain a mystery. And if they get into our rivers and our drinking water, well, it's obvious that we become the guinea pigs. Hydrocarbons aren't the only thing that come out of the ground when operators drill and frack wells in Pennsylvania. Drillers also report a staggering amount of waste, including, it was more than 65 million barrels. So 65 million barrels, a barrel is 42 gallons. So there were 2.7 or almost 3 billion gallons of liquid waste that was generated between November 1st, 2018 and October 31st, 2019 in this analysis. So over a year, almost 3 billion gallons of liquid waste, plus an additional 1.2 million tons of solid waste, all from drilling. And of course, we know that the liquid waste and those drill cuttings can be radioactive, often are radioactive. We know there's a lot of health concerns about radioactivity, and hopefully some of the other speakers today will talk more about that. But it's a huge concern. But this map was an interactive map that we made for Earthworks for a waste report that they did. And part of the analysis looks at, of course, where the waste goes. So I zoomed in on Pennsylvania and Ohio, and you can see the sites for the disposition of this waste, many of which are injection wells in eastern Ohio. But if we could zoom out, I could show you that some of the waste goes to states all over the country. So our waste is truly being exported and becoming somebody else's problem. So it's not just wells that, muck things up. As of March 2020, construction of the Falcon pipeline in western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio had resulted in all kinds of problems, including at least 34 incidents where there were losses of circulation of the fluids. And that totaled, and this is just the Pennsylvania part of those problems, 172,000 gallons went missing in the Pennsylvania portion. Plus, there were additional 18 what they call inadvertent returns, often to the surface. And those totaled 5,500 gallons. And half of that amount entered streams and wetlands. So at least 2,500 gallons went into waterways in Pennsylvania. And that's just one pipeline, the Falcon. We probably know, many of you are probably very familiar with problems on the Mariner East 2 pipeline that goes across the southern third of Pennsylvania. And I should say too that we're not just talking about the spills and leaks and inadvertent returns. We're talking also about egregious property rights violations that where people's property was taken from them by a private company. But the path of ME2, I think this is just amazing when you think about, again, this is one pipeline. ME2 had 1,227 stream crossings, 570 wetland crossings, and 11 pond crossings. And at 337 of those crossings affected special protection waters as deemed by the Pennsylvania DEP. And that's in addition, so with all that, there were over 150 spills or inadvertent returns together on Mariner to date. And that's in addition to the sinkhole problems that have also occurred on the Mariner route, some of those causing property damage. So again, plagued by problems. That's typical of pipeline projects in Pennsylvania and abroad. So every well pad, of course, has to be attached to a gathering line. Every gathering line has to be attached to a larger pipeline. And so you even get into these interstate pipelines. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of miles of pipeline that snake across Pennsylvania and slice and dice the landscape. All the while, the risk of catastrophic accidents is quite real. And that was evidenced, for example, by the explosion on the Revolution pipeline near Pittsburgh, I think less than 2 years ago. So we've looked at Frac Tracker. We examined data periodically from PIMSA, the federal agency that compiles data on pipelines. And we found that on average in the US, there's a pipeline accident, 1.7 pipeline accidents a day. So almost 2 accidents a day on the National Pipeline Network every day, on average. We find that those pipeline accidents require, on average, 9 people to be evacuated and $1.3 million in property damage each accident. A pipeline catches fire every 4 days and results in an explosion every 11 days. These incidents result in an injury every 5 days and a fatality every 26 days. So I know that's a lot of data, but it does underscore the seriousness of and the real threat the pipelines pose in our communities. But perhaps the most perilous period of the extraction boom faces us now, a dystopian vision of petrochemicals and plastics in the Ohio Valley, from Kentucky to Southwest Pennsylvania. The signature facility is in this planned build out is Royal Dutch Shell's ethane cracker in Monaca, PA, which is near Pittsburgh. And it's bound to be one of North America's largest producers of polyethylene. This is at a time when we know our oceans are drowning in plastic, and plastic is coursing through our own bodies. The hydrocarbon called ethane is found with the methane, aka natural gas, in some geologic formations, like a portion of the Marcellus Shale, especially in Southwest Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, and Northern West Virginia. And ethane is the preferred feedstock for polyethylene. So hence the reason the industry wants to come here. But the build out will further degrade the region's poor air quality and disproportionately burden low income and persons of color, like the industry has done in the Gulf Coast, as this photo from the Houston area suggests. The Shell cracker, other crackers, and all the polluting infrastructure will contribute notably to greenhouse gas emissions, fueling climate change. And it will add to the serious air quality impacts from fracking, again, that hopefully other speakers will be able to address a bit more than I have. I think it's important to remember that Pennsylvania is not an island. Our policies and practices have repercussions near and far. The ravenous natural gas industry now uses thousands of pounds of sand per every linear foot of a horizontal well. Think about that. Thousands of pounds per linear foot. The sand is a proppant to hold open cracks in the shale. But thousands of acres of west central Wisconsin, which is some of America's most productive farmland and rich soils, are being turned into sand mines. And this is in part to supply sand for fracking in Pennsylvania. Adding, I guess, insult to injury is that this part of Wisconsin is what inspired Aldo Leopold to write a Sand County Almanac, which is a treatise on ecology, a famous work. Well, the birds are coming home to roost, as they say. Pennsylvania may have as many as 700,000 abandoned wells. Only a few abandoned wells get plugged each year, and current bonding requirements may be woefully inadequate to plug modern wells. And the longevity of these plugs is variable. Abandoned wells can also be dangerous, polluting to both air and water, and they can be a source of fugitive methane to the atmosphere. So what kind of legacy are we leaving in our wake? With gas and oil bankruptcies on the rise, we may soon have a reckoning. And the taxpayers of Pennsylvania, I'm afraid, will pay dearly. The last count, and this was a 2016 data run, 1.1 million Pennsylvanians. So what, about over 10% of our state lived within 2 miles of an oil or gas well or a compressor station or other infrastructure. So that's one too many persons. And it's time to accelerate on a cleaner, better path forward. So thanks for listening. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about anything to do with fracking in Pennsylvania. I'll try to do my best.
Thank you so much, Brooke. And we do have a number of questions that have come in, and I'm not sure you know the answer to this one. I know I don't know the answer to this one. How much does the waterway surface lower when water is drawn from Marcellus shale fracking?
That is a good question. I've heard of subsidence. Of subsidence issues, and I know in certain geographies, it's probably more pronounced than perhaps it is in Pennsylvania. So I don't have any data on that in Pennsylvania, and then, but I know, just as an example, in California, where they have a lot of subsidence issues, and there's a lot of extraction, it's a big deal out there because it can drop the surface level of the land.
And we do have an awful lot of questions. We surely won't get to all of them, so we're keeping track of them, and we can get back to you with answers to some of these questions if we don't get to them or have an answer today. Another question comes in about, it's actually coming from Ireland. Currently in Ireland, a program for government is being negotiated that has within it the potential to halt the importation of fracked gas. Members of individual parties have to vote on that program. Is there a direct appeal you would like to make on behalf of the Pennsylvanian community impacted by fracking to those members?
No, well, it may say it's really exciting to have somebody from Ireland on the webinar today. And I believe New Fortress Energy, the same company that's building the plant near Wyalusing, it was planning to build an import facility in Ireland. So I don't have a specific plea to that person, but I would certainly love to work with them, and we should probably connect with a group that's working around Wyalusing called Protect Northern PA. It's a new group, and maybe there's some solidarity and information sharing that could be cultivated with that individual.
And just to put in a plug, our Better Path Presents webinar will be featuring one of the members of that group, as well as someone from the Delaware Riverkeeper Network fighting the Gibbstown plant on June 30th at 8 p.m.
Fantastic.
What does the outlook for the industry look like with respect to the pandemic? Do you think that there might be any impacts from the pandemic on how the industry is able to function here or elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's been a lot of different analyses around the economics of the industry, and the economics were already precarious before COVID-19, and certainly the tremendous slowdown in consumption of hydrocarbons because of COVID-19 exacerbated the already precarious state of the industry. How long that will last is unknown, but we do know that the industry was super over leveraged, and we do see we've seen several bankruptcies in this industry. So I guess it just goes without saying that it's a vulnerable time for the industry, and for those of us that are trying to transition to a clean energy future, it's an opportunity to accelerate that transition.
And here's one. Do you believe the drilling impact fees that communities will be receiving or receive are commensurate with the costs that those communities have had and will have to take on?
In short, no. I don't think. I mean, I think sure, they may have supported some local improvements, to fire halls and buy a fire truck or whatever. I mean, they do go back into the community in different ways, but there's going to be a legacy of pollution that already is, and there's going to be this issue of well abandonment, and there's going to be problems for years. So no, I mean, that's a short answer, and it's I can't elaborate on further right now.
And I'm not sure if you can speak to this, but I'm probably going to ask this of every speaker. What do you see as critical legislative actions in the next 10 years to rein in natural gas and advance renewable energy?
In short, we need to we need to ban it. We need to put moratoriums in place like other states have, like Maryland and New York. We need to, and I also believe that we need to tighten regulations as much as possible. Not that they're the ultimate solution, but if we can't get political will to do those other things, I don't know that we'll get better regulations in place either. But we need to keep people safe, because ultimately people are suffering as well as our environment. So I feel like anything we can do to protect people, and ultimately that means getting rid of this activity altogether, is important.
Thank you very much. I'll just add that there's been a real shift in the state that you brought up to petrochemicals from natural gas. And there are a lot of bills out there right now trying to promote petrochemical development. And I think that's one immediate thing that we can be looking out for, that we don't need to see more bills on petrochemical development. We don't need more subsidies of an industry that's going to drive us over the climate cliff and hurt our communities. Actually, there's one quick last question. Do you know of any reviewed papers that report on the measured radioactivity levels of gas?
I don't specifically, but a group called Physicians, Scientists, and Engineers for Healthy Energy has a really, they have one compendium, and then there's another compendium out there too. But those compendiums of research, are probably searchable by topics, and perhaps a paper could be found there.
Thank you. And in fact, we have a number of things I can send you, so I'll keep track of your question and get to you afterwards with a number of specific studies. So thank you for that. And thank you, Brooke.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for providing that great overview. And now that we're just coming to the half hour, I'm going to now introduce Leann Leiter. And she is with Earthworks, and she's going to provide us a demonstration of FLIR technology. And so if we can switch screens.
Right, let me.
There you are. Hi, Leann.
Hi, everybody. Let me attempt the screen switch here. I should be able to bring this up shortly, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. All right, one more step here. It's telling me I need to grant it access. Sorry about that. This is only probably the third time this week I've shared my screen, so I'm not sure why today it's being picky, but bear with me here.
No worries. If you need me to show your slides, I can do that too.
Thank you, Karen. We might need to use that for backup. Oh, here we go. Security and privacy. I'm still getting a denial here, Karen. Would you mind attempting to share what I sent you?
Happy to do it.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that, everyone.
Let me share my screen. My 2,000 things that are open. Do you see it?
I see it. Thank you, Karen.
Great.
I might just say click whenever we're ready for a slide change.
Great.
All right. Thanks so much. And sorry about the technical challenge there, everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. And thank you, Karen, and folks from Better Path and everyone for hosting this. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today, including some legislators whose names I recognize on here, and probably some of your staff as well. And just want to wish everyone a happy Juneteenth. I think this is a really special day, and I'm extra appreciative that everyone has taken some of their time to learn more about these issues. As Karen introduced me, my name is Leann Leiter. I see a couple familiar names on here, so I think some of you I've had the pleasure of meeting before, and you might be a little bit familiar with the work that I do at Earthworks. I'm going to show you some really powerful visual examples today that you might not have seen before, so I hope you'll stick around to see those and to hear a little bit about what we can do to tackle some of these issues related to oil and gas development in our state. I'm going to be sharing with you mostly about issues of air pollution. That's my area of expertise at Earthworks, is actually using some really specialized technology that lets us make visible the air pollution that's normally invisible from oil and gas development. So basically, we're going to be seeing things that you can't see with the naked eye, and I'm going to be talking to you all about how we do that today. Just by way of introduction, I cover most of the Appalachian region, primarily Pennsylvania and Ohio. I'm based in Pennsylvania. I live in Canonsburg, which is south of Pittsburgh by about 25 miles. I'm in the Cannon-McMillan School District, which you all might have heard of. Over the past year or two, we've made national news due to a really concerning pattern of rare childhood cancers that through a lot of community work, we are now getting some studies that will be done that will look into possible environmental causes. And some of those we're hoping will look into potential linkages to the extensive oil and gas development we have in my region. I'm in Washington County, which is the highest producing fracked gas producing county in Pennsylvania at last that I checked. And Pennsylvania as a state, for comparison, is second only to Texas for fracked gas production. So we've got quite a bit of development here in my area. A lot of frack truck traffic, drill rigs going up left and right, the pipeline development, including that Falcon pipeline that Brooke talked about a few moments ago. We've got all of that here in my area, but I work across the state, and I'm going to show you examples from throughout the region. Click, if you would, Karen, thank you. So I won't go into, Brooke did an excellent job kind of conveying the footprint of this industry as it already exists in our state. But what I wanted to show you here is this is representing the people, the population in Pennsylvania that live within a half-mile or less of an active source of oil and gas pollution. So that could be a well, compressor station. The reason why we highlight that half-mile radius is not because you're perfectly safe if you're outside of a half mile. In fact, this air pollution can travel hundreds of miles. Studies have shown that Maryland is actually dealing with problems from oil and gas pollution from my county and surrounding counties. But much of the health research on the impacts of oil and gas development and living close to it has really focused on some really significant patterns of health problems that occur within a half mile or less. And to put it into numbers, click if you would please, Karen, thank you. As Brooke said, we have well over 100,000 active oil and gas facilities in our state. And that means we have about a little over 1.5 million Pennsylvanians that are living within that particularly risky half-mile radius. That includes lots of students at over 1,000 schools that are located in that radius. And oil and gas has been shown to contribute directly to ground level ozone or smog, which we'll talk about a little bit throughout the presentation. This contributes directly to lost school days, to increased childhood asthma attacks. And then, of course, in a global perspective, Pennsylvania is contributing in a really big way to climate change. 88% of our state's greenhouse gases come from energy production and consumption. And methane, which is the primary constituent of what we call natural gas, is responsible for 25% of the global warming that we're experiencing today. So Pennsylvania has a pretty big role in the climate problem that we really need to get a handle on. Okay, go ahead, click, Karen. Thanks. And I'm often asked, when I've talked to decision makers and my neighbors and folks around me, why is this such a problem and why has it been allowed to happen? And I believe that a big part of it is because this pollution is invisible. to you and I without specialized equipment. We can't see it. It doesn't usually look like smoke. And you might walk around a beautiful rural county like mine of Washington and assume that we have great air quality. If you're not seeing a well pad, you might be looking at a forest or someone's farm. But in fact, the air pollution here, at least in my county and several other counties, has put us just barely within attainment of federal ozone standards. There's issues with particulate matter and volatile organic compounds, which we'll touch on briefly. So it really is a problem, and particularly in some of these rural communities where until this industry came in, air quality was a sure thing, but now it's no longer. You can click, Karen. And what we're seeing with our work with the specialized equipment that I'm going to talk about here very soon is that there's air pollution occurs at all stages of oil and gas development. So, most of us, I think, are familiar with the ubiquitous, very iconic drill rigs that you see at a gas well. There's pollution there, but it's happening even before that well is drilled. In fact, the hundreds and hundreds of truck trips that are required just to get one of these well pads started up are contributing huge levels of diesel particulate matter pollution. That's a really significant health problem for nearby residents. We're seeing pollution from the point of extraction to production, transmission through pipelines. We're even seeing it problems that are occurring in households due to use of natural gas in indoor settings. The equipment from which we are seeing it includes compressor stations, pipeline interconnects, flares that are lit or flares that are not properly lit, flares that are unlit. We're really seeing it across the board. And I'm going to show you quite a few examples here. But I do just want to mention, I spoke briefly to the idea that, this air pollution is even occurring in indoor homes, in indoor settings. Recent research has shown that use of natural gas appliances without, really specific venting controls has been shown to produce indoor air pollution levels that, if happening outside, would be illegal under federal and sometimes state standards. So I think that's a really important component that we all need to be aware of, that this pollution isn't just a risk for those of us who are living near the site of extraction. Okay, go ahead and click, Karen. So one of the ways in which we attempt to tackle this at Earthworks, and a big component of my work over the past few years, has been trying to capture the visual proof of this pollution and share it with others. We often start by partnering with impacted community members who have been noticing problems or have concerns about facilities near them. And we come out with our specialized optical gas imaging cameras, or OGI cameras, that let us see this pollution, and we record it and make it available to regulators, generally through a formal complaint process. We also try to share it with our decision makers, including the legislators and other elected officials who are on this webinar today. We encourage the public to share it as well. And we also make it available to the folks who are living with this pollution on a daily basis. You can see an example of the camera in action here. I'm going to give you quite a few more as we go through. Oh, click, thanks. Here's just a close-up letting you see one of our OGI cameras in action. This is in the Allegheny National Forest, one of our beautiful tracts of public land in the state, but unfortunately it is full of these leaky conventional wells. And we are seeing these leaks like all over the place. I mean, I've just visited many of these sites and we're seeing this kind of pollution. But here you can actually see the camera in action and how what appears by the naked eye to just be a stationary, inactive, conventional well is actually emitting pollution. Folks often ask me, okay, well, how does this camera work? How is this different than a household video camera or a camera that's just designed to use infrared and show heat? It does show heat, but it also has a variety of other components that enable it to show us gases that are in a very narrow range of the infrared spectrum. And the camera blocks all of the other visible light and other infrared light and lets in just the light that's reflected by these specific compounds that we know come with oil and gas development. And so I always like to share with folks who might question, the technology, because the industry has done a great job of sowing doubt about it, even though they use these cameras themselves. When I was in my training to use the camera, the room was full of oil and gas workers who are going to be out using these at their own site. So the industry know how these work, but they will often try to discount the evidence. But I like to share with folks, this is over $100,000 piece of equipment with a specialized lenses and sensors, even has a internal compressor that gets the temperature down to negative 321 degrees Fahrenheit to stabilize the molecules. It's a very specialized piece of equipment. And we receive, those of us that use the camera at Earthworks, receive the same training and certification that the DEP and the US EPA, and of course the industry folks are receiving to use it as well. Go ahead, Karen. And of course, you might be wondering what this camera shows within that narrow spectrum of infrared. It's showing us methane, which is a super powerful climate pollutant, 86 times more powerful than carbon dioxide over a 20-year time period. And it also contributes to that ground level ozone that we talked about briefly earlier. Go ahead and click again one time. Thanks, Karen. And then these are just some of the known and suspected carcinogens that are associated with oil and gas development, and some of those that the camera enables us to see as well. Click. All right, so this is the fun part, I think. I'm going to show a number of examples of the camera in action. So Karen, each of these will require 3 clicks, I think, just so you know. So go ahead and click. So that you could see there my coworker Pete in action. This was a site in Washington County, not that far from where I live. We were actually doing a tour with Senator Lindsey Williams. I'm not sure if she or her staff are on today, but she was actually out with us when we caught this pollution event in action. This plume of emissions happened for at least a half an hour and was continuing even when we left the site. And what I want to point out to folks is that this is, there's no notification for the surrounding homes and farms. Karen, if you click one time, I think you can get a side-by-side image there. There we go. So you can see what the site looks like. There's several farms kind of surrounding it, and no one had any notification that this was happening. When I reported it to the DEP, they were responsive to my complaint, but they said that because it had happened several days prior, it probably wasn't a continuous source of emissions, that there was nothing they could do about it because they weren't there when it was happening. Go ahead and click again, please. This is another site in Washington County. This is a well pad under development. And here's what you can see with the naked eye. If you click once here, you can see what the camera enabled us to see. These are probably natural gas fired or diesel engines on the site being used for some of the processes there. And again, no notification or warning for surrounding communities about these events. You can click again, Karen, just for the side-by-side. And again, this is taken at pretty much the exact same moment. But I always like to point out the crane did move. You can see. So I took the camera with the picture with the digital camera, and then a few minutes later turned on the optical gas imaging camera. But just trying to demonstrate that what you can see with the naked eye versus the camera. Okay, go ahead and click. And here's a compressor station. If you're not familiar with these, they are. We have quite a few of these in our state and quite a few in my area. They're sort of these large pumping stations that are used to create a kind of a vacuum to move gas along pipelines. Sometimes they contain refining and processing capabilities like this one. And if you click, Karen, you can see what it looks like through the optical gas imaging camera. And I think it's really important to know that what you're seeing here is it's not a blowdown event. It's not a special release. In fact, I've been to this site probably close to a dozen times over several years with the optical gas imaging camera and been able to see a very similar emissions image every single time. And in fact, I've been to compressor stations in 5 different states in the Appalachian region and seen very similar emissions at each of those. You can go ahead and click, Karen. Thanks. And now I'm going to show you 2 examples back to back here of one particular site And these examples are 1 year apart. We've been to this site probably half a dozen times over the past few years. And I share these examples because I want to explain a little bit some of the limitations that we're seeing with agencies' ability to regulate and enforce problems at these sites. So of course, I'm one person covering a couple states. I can't catch everything. And DEP does have more than one person doing inspections, but unfortunately not nearly enough inspectors that are able to go out in the field compared to the over 100,000 oil and gas wells that Brooke and I both pointed out the state has. So let me talk about this example a little bit. This is a well pad, a fracked gas well pad in Washington County. It is about 500 feet from the back door of a resident. And we recorded, we're actually concerned about kind of the black plume of pollution here, which was seen to be uncontrolled emissions. We reported it to the DEP. DEP confirmed it, required the operator to fix it. The fix, however, if you click to the next slide, was here. And this is a what's called a BTEX tank, which is intended to contain and control a variety of very dangerous compounds from oil and gas development. And what you see here is actually just a hatch on the tank that's been stuck ajar. We were able to record this problem several times and report it to the DEP. DEP themselves came out and recorded the problem, required the operator to fix it, told them to add it to their daily site checklist so that it wouldn't happen again. But yet we continue to document it happening. Eventually, the operator acknowledged to DEP that they were having this problem with this same type of tank at their other sites throughout the state. They eventually removed the tank and all of the associated equipment, really reducing the emissions and the health symptoms that the resident was experiencing. But all in all, getting these changes to take place took over a year and a half, took numerous complaints filed by myself and the impacted resident, countless phone calls with the inspector. I always want to point out that this inspector was actually very responsive and very involved, but was also very limited in his authority and ability to issue violations. No violations were ever issued. No fines were ever issued. And it took quite a huge effort to get these changes to take place. So I think this highlights Brooke's point that while we really need to strengthen regulations, we also need to strengthen enforcement. And it doesn't appear that we can rely on either to completely protect people in Pennsylvania. Go ahead and click through, Karen. So just want to highlight that there's a lot more to that story and our other work in Pennsylvania that'll be coming out in a report, I believe, this month. We're just finishing up edits on now. If you're interested in this, my contact information will be at the end, or I'm sure you can share it with Karen. I'd be happy to provide a copy of the report. This goes into detail on our 200 plus site visits that we've done in Pennsylvania over the past 2.5 years and 50 some complaints that we filed with DEP and other agencies. And we're trying to highlight some of the limitations that we've seen and make recommendations for improvement. And you can click. And so I think our work in this important tool of optical gas imaging highlights gaps in enforcement, but it also highlights gaps in policy. And I just want to speak very briefly to that. Folks may be aware that the DEP is right now working on finalizing a really hard, long fought for rule that will help limit pollution from existing oil and gas development. So from these 100,000 sites that we already have in Pennsylvania. But unfortunately, right now, as it stands, we're in public comment period, but the rule, draft rule itself has some really big gaps in it. And one in particular is it will basically exempt the entire conventional or low producing well industry. These are a huge source of pollution in Pennsylvania. They're not producing much product, but they're producing a ton of pollution. I'm going to show you just a few examples here. If you click 2 more times, Karen, the other 2 will pop up. So these 2 sources are at the wellhead. And then if you click once more, I think you'll see emissions from a condensate tank. And these are in northern Pennsylvania, just a variety of sites that I was able to document, I think in early March. So this is something we'd really love to see improved in the rule. If you have any interest in participating in public hearings that are coming up next week or providing written comments, again, please get in touch with me with my contact information that I'll share here shortly. I'd love to have add your voice to this fight, because it's so important that we don't leave these huge pollution reductions on the table. We can really close these gaps and strengthen this rule. You go ahead and click, Karen. Oh, and this is just a specific example, a close-up of one of these, what we call conventional well sites, and a leak that's happening there. If you click, it'll show you the OGI video. And I just want to share that the pollution from this site was so extreme. We were out with some friends that had a methane detector, and we were actually driving down the highway, and they had a window open. And with the window open, their methane detector reached its max levels. And that's even before we saw this well site. That's how much pollution was being released, along with probably a host of volatile organic compounds. And this is just an evaporative effect coming out of these tanks. This is likely happening, more or less day in, day out, depending on the weather conditions. And click again, Karen. All right, so I think those are all the examples that I had for you. The rest is just sharing with you a little bit about how to learn more about our program at this link, cep.earthworks.org. And here you can see just kind of the spread of problems that we've been able to find across the state. You go and click again, please. But I think this is what's really important, is sharing this proof. Just collecting it and reporting it to DEP is really having, has limited results. I invite all of you to think of ways you can share it. My thanks to Representative Chris Robb, who's tweeted our optical gas footage. Here is Senator Lindsey Williams out in the field with us pre-COVID. And at the bottom is an example of an impacted resident who is invited to testify in front of a Senate committee, Pennsylvania Senate committee, and shared examples of the OGI videos from near his home. So hope you all will consider ways to do that as well. The next slide, I think, is where you can find all of our videos from Pennsylvania. We have from many, many states, but here's how you can find those. And if you click one more time, this is if you're interested in us coming to a facility near you. Of course, we're pretty limited in our ability to do that during COVID times, but this is the page where you can find information about doing so. And then I think one more slide has my contact information. If I can answer any questions that we don't get to today, please feel free to get in touch. And if there are, sites that you're interested in, or videos that I can provide, or help come up with ideas that you can use them when talking to your decision makers or sharing with the public, please feel free to let me know. I'd love to help brainstorm ideas. And thank you again for your time and for being here today.
Thank you so much, Leann. And I'm actually stopping sharing so I can get to the chat, because I saw the numbers popping up and up and up. So let me see. And you're getting actually a lot of comments congratulating you and thanking you for what you've done. And so I do want to ask, answer a question, a general question that is about getting a recording of this afterwards. And yes, actually, we're recording this session today, so you'll be able to get recording as soon as this evening when I'm downloading it and posting it to Vimeo. Is the DEP still inspecting gas sites and responding to citizens' complaints during COVID-19?
Yes, it's a great question. They have their position on it has varied since the beginning of the shutdown. And we've been very actively communicating with DEP and pushing for transparency around that process. Long story short, they are continuing to do some inspections on site, but the number has been reduced from prior years during the same time. So we know that the shutdown is having an impact on that oversight of oil and gas sites. And we have heard anecdotally from folks that complaint response times have been slower than usual as well.
And is there any work being done by Earthworks in South Louisiana and Cancer Alley?
Great question. We're a pretty small team, which I don't often share, but I think it's good to know. We're a pretty small staff. We do have some folks working in the Gulf Coast region, and a new hire actually doing some organizing down there. So we have done some optical gas imaging work there in the past, and I hope we can continue to do so because definitely our regions are very, very connected, and our struggles are really connected to that region.
And the one I'm going to probably ask everyone, what do you see as the critical legislative actions in the next 10 years to rein in natural gas and advance renewable energy?
That's a great question, Karen. I mean, I'm so glad you're asking that of all of us. I think there's so many that could be listed here that would take up a lot of time. But I think just more specific to my work, I would say that, really providing DEP more resources to do, to be actually be out in the field and be catching problems is key. But I think we really do need to recognize that we're probably not going to never have enough inspectors to be catching all these problems at over 100,000 sites. So we really need to be promoting legislation and policy changes that are going to shift us very quickly away from this industry. And I think some of the ways to do that include, empowering local people to have a say in whether they want these sources of pollution near them.
And a question about the methane rules that you had brought up before. Do they cover the orphan and abandoned wells issue that you talked about? Is that something that would be captured?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they do not address orphan and abandoned wells specifically. That is a huge issue in Pennsylvania, and one that I'm really passionate about because I love being on our public lands, and it's really disappointing to see these old sources of pollution just venting in an uncontrolled manner across our public lands. I do think additional measures are really needed to get the abandoned and orphan well problem under control. But what I would like to point out, the connection to this existing source rule, is that if we are letting the conventional industry be exempt from these rules, we're already seeing rampant pollution from that part of the industry. So I think if we allow that to continue, we're only going to see far greater problems as operators do begin to walk away from their wells and their responsibilities. So I do think participating in this process is key, but we need to do more to really address the abandoned well issue as well.
Well, thank you so much, Leann, for this great presentation. I saw so many things popping up in chat, so obviously you had a huge impact, and I very much appreciate it. And with that, we're going to turn to our next speaker, Lois Bjornsen with Clean Air Council, who's going to talk to us about southwestern Pennsylvania impacts. She's in Washington County. And I'm sharing my screen for Lois. So let me do that. And Lois, can you unmute?
Is that better?
Oh, now we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, excellent. I apologize because it wasn't working fine on my phone. You don't have an echo or anything, do you?
No, actually sounds okay. If anybody hears an echo, put it in the chat and I'll try to stop it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, I really, really appreciate being part of this tour and being able to show what people here in Washington County are dealing with. And I'll give Karen a second to get my stuff up. And I
have it up, but it's still on the wrong one. Here we go.
Okay.
Is that showing properly now?
I don't see anything in front of me, but I can pull mine up and go through it and look at mine here. I just am unable to share with you.
Let me see. I'm trying to juggle too many screens at the same time.
Sorry.
I think maybe I have to stop share and start again. So let me do that.
Okay, I apologize.
No. It's one of those technical things about doing this, but. Now, do you see it?
That's still Leann.
Oh my goodness. All right, maybe you should try putting yours up. I don't want to waste time.
No, I agree. That's fine. Let me see what I can grab here.
Don't know why it's not coming up.
Yeah, I have mine up. Let me just see if I can share screens with you.
Are people seeing the proper screen now? Lois, are you seeing?
One second, let me get back to you. I have mine. Now this is it. Perfect. This is it.
Okay. Excellent. Sorry so much about that.
No. It's my apologies too. The internet is very spotty here. So again, my apologies. But yes, so my name's Lois Bjornsen, and I am the field organizer with Clean Air Council, and I host Frackland Tours. Frackland Tours were implemented to help educate people and different groups and legislators on what it's really and truly like to live here in the shale field with myself and the communities that I work within. So on this, if you could go to the second slide, Karen, that would be great. So this second slide is two people that I've grown to know over the years. It's Brian and Rein. Brian and Rein live in Deemston, Pennsylvania, which is about 10 minutes from my hometown of Fredericktown. It is East Bethlehem Township. Brian and Ryan's well pad is 300 feet from their home. It is their well pad. And they have both experienced numerous health impacts due directly to bad air quality, water quality, and land actual contamination. A toxicologist, and there's only a few, two, that see only about 60 cases a year, told Brian and Rein that they should no longer have any contact with the air, water, and soil near their home, and that this is where they live. So I'm not sure exactly what you do with something like that, but this is again what industry does. They come in and paint everything as roses, and it's not really roses. At one point, there was a water runoff, and it actually pushed the whole foundation of Brian's house. To date, right now, what is going on is the industry has come in and they have capped Brian's well, and they are trying to take everything back to, quote, restore the property, but we know that it cannot be restored. So they're in a rather quite a pinch, unfortunately, with nowhere to go, and their health impacts just continue getting worse. Next slide, please. This is Walter and Linda King. They're a wonderful, wonderful couple. They live in West Pike Run Township. It's Daisytown, Pennsylvania. If you look to the left of the screen, this is a actual aerial footage of where they live. Their home is the bottom left corner, and this is the full moon and blue moon compressor station. And actually, Leann has amazing FLIR footage of this leaking. It leaks constantly. So what you can't see in this picture is built now around the compressor station is a sound wall. And so around the sound wall, it funnels literally everything directly to their home. At the very bottom of the page, it's kind of hard to see in the aerial shot, there's a smaller home. That was Linda's ancestral home. That's where she grew up. And so her and Walter decided 20 years ago to, build their dream home here. Linda's father died of cancer after the compressor station was built, living in her ancestral home. And Walter was just recently diagnosed with throat cancer. And the doctor said, well, this could have contributed, but they won't say further. I just saw him 2 days ago, and he was having some pretty serious health impacts from the actual radiation treatment that he had to have to his throat. So again, this is their home of 20 years, and where do they go? The company had told them that they didn't have enough money to take them to court. So again, this is just another stickler. Next slide, please. So this is Danny Russell. Again, Leann has footage of the compressor station near his home, which is the Twilight compressor station. The Twilight compressor station, the left pad, you can see from Danny's porch. And you can also, there's a Sunrise Pond. So this is a pond that is piped from the Monongahela River that supplies water to all the local well pads and pads elsewhere. There's a pump that runs continuously in the well pad, in the Sunrise Pond for the well pads. And this is just constant noise, high decimal readings. Danny has experienced numerous spills that the industry came by in the middle of the night and washed into his yard. And there was at one point a 9-mile spill, and they cleaned it up with cat litter. and threw it on the road and pretended like it didn't happen, along with other terrible health impacts that Danny's been experiencing and his family and things. They used to have air monitors inside of their home, but they were always in the purple reading or the highest reading, and that was inside of their house with the windows closed. What you can't see on this lane is another resident also that lives in a house approximately 1,000 feet from Danny's, who has 2 children. One of the children, the oldest child, has had seizures. The left pad literally runs off into their yard. The other child has had tremendous health impacts from birth. And the doctors, again, will not say, you know, that it's definitely caused from environmental, but they think that has something to do with it. Next slide, please. This is Jack and Darlene O'Neill of West Pike Run Township, and this is the Twilight Compressor Station that they are also by, and this is the Twilight Compressor Station that you can see from Danny's porch. The reason that I showed you 3 people from West Pike Run Township in Daisy Towner, these people all live on the same road. So they are surrounded by the Full Moon, the Blue Moon Compressor Station. They're surrounded by the Twilight Compressor Station, the Lux Pad, numerous other pads, the Sunrise Pond. In addition to that, pipelines and meter stations. All of this leaks. Jack and Darlene have lived in their home for 42 years. They just recently moved from there about a year ago, about a mile or so up the road. So they're not as heavily impacted, but they are still impacted. Darlene is my children's bus driver. So I know them very well. They're wonderful folks. And Jack's business is still at his old residence. He has an auto repair business. So he is still daily exposed to all of this. Next slide, please. This is Rose friend and Karen LeBlanc. Karen and I went to high school together, and you know, it's really strange at what really connects people with these things. A dear friend said, I have a friend that is having problems with the well pad, and it turned out we went to high school together. You can see the pad behind Rose. It's the Hunter pad. Now, technically, this pad is not on Rose's property, but it's probably less than 1,000 feet from her home. I've been in her home when the house actually shakes during the drilling process. Leann had referred to earlier about the time with the 5-mile plume coming off of the pad when Senator Lindsey Williams was here. This is the pad that she's speaking about. And ironically, to date, there is absolutely no agreement with the company. They are going by the old Atlas agreement and putting everything around that old Atlas agreement, which I don't think is legally allowed, but it is being done. And initially, when the pad was first being drilled, Karen, who is just a tremendous researcher, found out that that this pad was being built on an Indian village. This area used to be called Indian Ridge. It's now called Highland Ridge. Rose grew up here. She's one of 12. She came back here a few years ago to retire and live the last years of her life. So after all of this and sort of trying to stall the company from proceeding forward, it was found out that the company knew that this was an Indian village and possibly a burial ground. There is a burial ground, and they were still just moving forward. So it's been quite a battle. Next slide, please. This is Wesley Silva. This is, again, a pad in Mariana, Pennsylvania. This is at the bottom of the hill from the Hunter pad. And I neglected to say both of these pads are super pads. So they have 17 boreholes in addition to more boreholes on them. Wesley is the former councilman of Mariana Borough. This is his granddaughter, one of his grandchildren. It's little Cheyenne, and she wakes a lot with nosebleeds as well as other children that he cares for. Wesley's a pastor, and he's taken in a lot of kids that he has helped through the years. What you can see in this pad, this is at the bottom of the hill from the pad, all the houses up to the right. So that's where Wesley and all the people are living that are getting exposed to this air toxins and pollutants coming off of this Gahagan super well pad. There's also a 5 million gallon in-ground impoundment, and there's an above ground 2 million gallon impoundment on this pad. Next slide, please. So this is Wesley's home. This is from Frack Tracker and Earthworks. their oil and gas threat map, which is an excellent tool if anyone wants to use this. You simply type in your address. Wesley's home is that dot in the center, and this is what surrounds his home. And not just his home, Rose's home, and so on and so forth. I simply used his address. Next slide, please. This is Kim Laskowski. And again, the reason I'm showing you a few people from Mariana, these are just some of the people that are exposed to what is happening with the oil and gas industry. This is the view from her porch. This is the Gahagan pad. So everything wafts into her home. Kim has had serious health impacts due directly from air pollution. She has had a loss of some teeth. She has constant chronic upper respiratory and problems as such. Always a sort of a mucousy like phlegm in her throat and a metal taste in her mouth. And Kim is quite the advocate and has done a ton of research and knows an awful lot. So next slide, please. Wesley and her live approximately 3 streets away from each other. And this is just some of the endless truck traffic that we see, as Leann had alluded to. Again, the diesel fumes coming off and you know, filling our lungs with volatile organic compounds and particulate matter. You may even hear some of the trucks rolling by my house right now. Next slide, please. This is just the Mariana Compressor Station because, again, this is part of the build-up. A lot of people are told, oh, it's just one well pad. It's not just one well pad. There's pipelines, there's compressor stations, there's meter stations. This compressor station is in a beautiful part of Mariana next to the creek that flows into the Monongahela River. These are in the state game lands where people hunt and fish. Next slide, please. This is Dale Teaberry. I think Leann may have showed a photo of Dale already. And she explained that, so I don't want to be redundant, but Dale has been fighting for a number of years here, and the DEP has come out and actually inspected and found numerous leaks as well as earthworks. But this pad is only 500 feet from his home. I just spoke with Dale a few days ago, and you know, he can still at times smell things, even after dismantling pretty much the whole pad. Next slide, please. So this is a daycare center. And this is in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. And you can see behind the daycare center is an above ground impoundment with a tarp over it, and there's no fence or anything around the impoundment. And then directly, you know, this is the same shot. This is just the buses at the bottom, and this is the daycare center actually. And you can see where the kids play, and there's the well pad. Now, this daycare center has been here for 25 years. So the well pad came after the daycare was in existence. The interesting thing is I'm working with a gentleman now, and they want to shut this daycare center down because they do not have proper playground equipment. So I've been to this daycare center numerous times, and I'm sort of laughing at this because they want to shut it down for that reason. But you can stand there, and when you've been on pads and do tours, you really have a lot of, when you come off of this, you really feel pretty bad, nausea, sort of sickness, upper respiratory, and a really nasty metal taste in your mouth. And that happens to me frequently after I do the tours because you're exposed to all of these, quite frankly, poisons. You can stand behind there where the kids play and taste metal in your mouth. The farmer that sold this to industry is now selling his house that's directly behind the daycare center. Next slide, please. And this, again, this is not the best picture, but this is Eqt Park. This is in North Rein Township. It's a beautiful, gorgeous park. If you look across, there's a well pad. If you look to the right and left of you, there are pipelines. If you look further, you can see the meter station. So kids are up here playing soccer, people are having picnics, walking, and so on and so forth, and we've got well pads. And this is one that we can see in the distance. There are 4 more encompassing this park. Next slide, please. So this is a dear friend of mine, and she is part of, unfortunately, the cancer cluster, and her son died of Ewing sarcoma. So, you know, this comes back to, again, the radioactivity and things that are happening, and we're wondering what is stirring what up, what is happening here, that there are huge cancer clusters. And it's not just in the Cannon-McMillan School District, it's in every district. Next slide, please. And this is just a well pad about a quarter mile down the road from my house in the beginning of the fracking process that some of you have seen and some of you may not have. And again, remember, this goes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Trucks, truck traffic, trains, everything is everything is trucked in. Everything you see, water, it is all trucked in. Next slide, please. And this is a sand pit and a compressor station. This is a Mark West compressor station. This again is right next to the pad that I just showed you. So as you're getting on the highway, you have a sand pit with trucks, and they're actually spraying the residual waste trucks out here to reload again with sand. And so you have all of that silica dust and all of that more air pollutions and things flying into the air, in addition to the well pads and the compressor station that is directly behind the sand pit. Next slide, please. And so this is my neighbor's house. This pad lights up our side yard when it is fracking, and it fracks on and off. Right now, it's, as we call, quiet, but remember, it's never quiet. It's always leaking. So our kids play together at times. We can walk to their house, and again, this lights up my side yard at night when it's fracking. Next slide, please. So this is just a group of children, my children. And the main thing about this slide is that look at their ages. So you can see they're younger. My daughter in the first picture was 5. And then there's the center picture, and they're a little older. And then the last picture was taken actually a year ago. I thought it was about 6 months ago, but I checked. So, and my oldest is now 19, 16, 14, and 10. So from 5 to 10, if you just judge by my daughter, this is what they've grown up in. As a parent, I think the hardest thing is that, you want your kids to be raised in a place that is safe, where they can have a nice childhood and they can explore and do the things that kids do, especially with having like 4 kids. They need to go outside. It's important, especially for mom. You think, I don't think I did the right thing here. And you can't protect your kids from everything, but there are certain things that you can try to protect them from. They all have experienced some sort of health impact due directly to oil and gas, whether it's rashes, bloody noses. 3 of my 4 children have had Lyme's disease due directly to climate change. So, and there's also an ongoing thought in my head of what are they going to experience as they age? We don't really know yet. We just know what has happened to them so far. And children that are fairer skinned, redheads, blondes, tend to have more health impacts. We're not exactly sure why, but they do. So my 3rd son has experienced more health impacts. My children that are older seem to have gotten away from some of the health impacts. And I think it's simply because they're not outside as much. The other thing I'd like to tell about my children, because people say, well, when they go to school, it won't be so bad because at least they're not exposed to it. So my children, they audition and they go to school at Eqt Park, which is in Midland, Pennsylvania, which is 8 minutes from the petrochemical hub. And so they're exposed to things at school, at their home. We never get away from it. And the constant buildup and building out is still existing. So thank you very much. And I hope that gives people an idea of, a brief idea of what it's like to live here.
Thank you so much, Lois. And I just want to make a quick note on the last thing that you said about going to school, because I actually wrote an article on this a few years ago. People don't take into account the fact that HVAC systems really aren't equipped to deal with the kind of pollution that's coming from fracking operations. And so even though there's this air exchange going on in the school, which would seem like a good idea, it's actually bringing in to the school so that kids in their classrooms are held captive. I wanted to ask you that.
Right.
I wanted to ask you that first question that I'm asking everyone about legislative actions that you believe that would rein in the industry over the next 10 years. Do you have any thoughts of what the priorities should be?
Yeah, that's a difficult question for me. I think that it's hard because here in Pennsylvania we already have everything that's here. We have the wells, we have the pipelines, we have the compressor stations, we have the gas plants, gas power plants and things. So it's difficult for me. I'm going to say that I'm glad that something is happening. Do I think it's the best? No. But I know that if if something would happen, like we significantly would be able to breathe easier, at least at 60% better than what we have right now. Because these are all existing sources around us. There's a few new sources, but most of the sources here are existing. So they're completely unregulated. And then you throw in abandoned wells and all these other issues, you know, something, again, this is a step in the right direction, but it's not the best. It's very difficult, very difficult.
Yeah. Somebody had a question about one of the slides, the road at Walter and Linda King's location. There was a dark streak. Is that Brian? Do you know?
On the slide with Brian with Walter and Linda King.
There was a streak in the middle of the road on the slide of the Walter and Linda King's location.
I don't know if that is or not, to be honest with you, because that was the drone footage. I'm not sure. That could be something as simple from that height as grass growing down there, because it's like a gravel road going down there back to the farm, but I'm not sure, so I can't speak to that.
And I'm just checking because we got another comment. There's been a question coming in from Massachusetts, and I see that they're asking another question here, but related. But how can you help raise awareness, or how can they help raise awareness in other states, because they get gas from Pennsylvania? Do you know of any programs that are working on things like that?
Yeah, so I've actually been to Boston, and I spoke with the whole entire legislative body on this. If you want me to come up and speak again and bring some more people, I will, to let them know that this is still happening. I think that's really what it's about. And I know Boston is far away, but we're doing virtual tours now. And I'm all willing to, when people are wanting to come out again, to do small in-person tours and actually sit and talk with residents. That's really just the way to do it, is you've got to make people aware of what's happening. And the best way to do it really is face to face, because you can look at pictures and say, oh, that's terrible, but when you're sitting in someone's living room and their house is shaking, or, you're looking at their sick child, there's a difference there. So that's what I recommend.
And I also wanted to ask you, on behalf of the person asking from Ireland, since even though we're talking about petrochemicals coming from maybe northeastern Pennsylvania for a change, but you're in the heart of it all in southwestern Pennsylvania, what message would you have to people in Ireland who are considering a vote to ban imports of LNG?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to actually work with some of the people in Ireland, so I hope it's some of my friends and the people that I met. And I think that is the best way to go, because if you cut the supply chain, then there's not a demand for it. So if people aren't using the frack gas, then people don't want the frack gas. I think that's the way to go, and I'm really, really proud of Ireland and for pushing this through. I'm really happy for them. Real happy.
And there's a question about, you brought up the cancer cluster and showed one of the mothers. And I'm just wondering, the question here is about last year, and of all things, June 19th of last year was when we had the legislative briefing, and we followed that by taking the letter up to Governor Wolf's office, asking for him to take action on cancer cases. And so the question here is about the studies that he mentioned back in November. Have you heard any more information about what those studies are, what they consist of, when they're going to start, anything?
No, nothing, not a word. And I've even, it hasn't been recent, but I did initially numerous times reach out to the contact that we had, as well as some of the other parents, and we've heard nothing. Unfortunately, we haven't.
And here's one about, it's just a general question, but because it does have horrible health impacts, someone asks, how can we most effectively fight fracking in Pennsylvania?
Well, that's a really hard question, because it's like the horse is out of the barn. I hate to use that expression. We're behind the 8 ball here. So as far as fighting fracking, it's really still, again, making people aware of what's still happening, and not listening to the rhetoric of industry saying that there's a slowdown and that we're not doing anything and there aren't any new wells. It's again, listening to the people on the ground that this is really happening to and being aware of it. Because we are behind the 8 ball. It's just that simple. It's already here. So we have to keep educating people and making people, it's not really education because people I think understand, but making people understand that this is still happening and this is going to continue to happen as long as things proceed the way that they are.
And one more question I think we have time for, and that is, it's a question about the jobs. How many actual Pennsylvanians' jobs would be affected by a fracking moratorium, or a ban on fracking? Do you have any sense of how full the employment is in your area of the state where it's been happening the longest?
So, I can't answer to statistics on that, but what I can tell you is that I here, I moved away from here and I live back here now. And I can tell you that I know 2 people that work within industry that are local that have the really good paying job, but they're crazy, awful, horrible hours and, 6 and 7 days a week. I don't know people personally that live here that have other jobs. So I can't speak to that. I can just tell you personally that I know 2 people that work for industry. So to me, if there's all these amazing jobs and there's all this incredible work, why isn't everyone employed by industry? I see more people, even within our local school district. It's a very transient school district because of industry workers coming in and working that are from out of state. So that's just, I can just speak to my experience there. Again, I don't have the stats on that and I don't want to quote something and be wrong. So.
And just one last question. It looks like we have time for one more. What do you think about the impact fees? That was a question that was asked earlier. Do you think that the impact fees are commensurate with the costs the communities have had to take on?
It's a shame because sadly, the communities that I work in, a lot of them are environmental justice communities and they rely on those impact fees. But what we've learned is you can't rely on impact fees. It's very similar to what we've learned to the coal industry when that all went away and people were relying on the fees for the taxes for the schools closed. So this is something that people have to get away from and stop relying on. It's kind of like a child that's given an allowance and is never able to grow up and learn to take care of things for themselves. So we can't continue to do that as a state and think that it's okay and just keep touting the money and the money that they've given us. I mean, just watch the stock market. They're doing terrible. If they weren't given subsidies, they would implode. So it's time for people to stop relying on that.
Well, thank you so much, Lois, for this excellent presentation and for always speaking up on behalf of the communities in Pennsylvania. And now we're going to hear from another person from another very heavily impacted part of the state, and that is Vera Scroggins, who is with the Citizens for Clean Water organization up in Susquehanna County, where fracking went after it started in southwestern Pennsylvania. So you're going to get another perspective. I'm looking for Vera. Are you able to
Vera
unmute?
Hey. Hi, Chris. So we got, hi, Chris. We still have hemp growing in our county.
There you are.
Good to hear it.
There's a delay.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody but Vera. So there's not too much background noise. No problem. Vera, if you could unmute. You're unmuted.
Unmute.
I can hear you, Vera.
This is Vera, and I'm here with Ray Kembala. And I'm here at Ray's house.
You're getting an echo.
We're both going to probably talk somehow alternate. It's, I guess I hear 2 computers. That's what's throwing me off.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to. You can probably turn the sound down on one.
Give me the phone, Vera.
Yeah, turn that down and then see if you have to turn down yours maybe. But anyway, I just wrote a few things. Maybe that, if I can go lower or turn that off. I keep hearing that one.
Go ahead.
The thing is, we're impacted still. There's still fracking in our county. It's almost 11 years, if not more. And they're fracking and drilling, especially Cabot oil and gas, during COVID-19, during this whole lockdown. So we have the usual problems. We even have casing failures as of this month. They continue to have casing failures while they're drilling, even though Cabot likes to say they're doing things better, or others are saying they're doing things better. So better is not happening. And we continue to have violations on these companies, particularly Cabot. They got at least 900 violations and counting. And they're still drilling here. So we have here across the road, one of the gas sites that's in the grand jury investigation that just came out, which is Costello 1. And then we have another one just like what, a half a mile up, quarter of a mile up? Guessford 8 and 4. And that's in the grand jury investigation. So I've been doing this since 2008. I've been documenting, observing, photographing, videotaping, interviewing people, documenting so that we know we have something on record in case we keep getting ignored. Now, we've been appealing to the legislators in our county, in Harrisburg, for years. We have appealed to the governor for years. We've appealed to the president of the United States for years, to the AG, and every other department you can imagine. And we basically are still being fracked. We're still being drilled. And now all of a sudden we got 15 charges on Cabot. That took at least 10 years or more. So that finally happened after all kinds of pleading, testimony, visits to Harrisburg, visits to legislators. It finally happened. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit jaded at this point because of what we've gone through. So I don't know where this is going to go. I'm glad something happened, but like, you know, how long are you supposed to wait? It's near our homes, next to our homes, on school property, next to our schools, next to nursing homes, next to hospitals. So we have all of this going on, air quality, over 55 compressor stations, spewing all their toxins, cancer-causing toxins. That's going on all over our county, and over 1,700 gas wells, like some of the other people showed, Leann and others, all of the methane and other gases and toxins coming out of these facilities. These are industrial zones in our communities. We live in rural area with hardly any zoning. We now have an industrial area. Why is that allowed? Why are we supposed to be, it's okay for us to be exposed to this? This is an outrage, and we have been a sacrifice zone, and we still are, besides all the other counties, the rural, especially rural counties. And what is the impact on our health? God only knows, 10, 20 years from now, even what's happening now to people. We didn't have industry like this in my county. I moved here specifically from the New York City area. I specifically looked for an area without industry to speak of, with clean air, clean water. And what do we get? After 17 years here, 2008 or so, industry moves in. And there's no controls, basically, to speak of, little baby controls. DEP is doing the best they can. They really need much more people, and they need more stringent regulations, and not only fines, you need to close down these companies. A company like Cabot with 900 violations and millions in fines, and they're banned from a 9 square mile area in Dimock, Pennsylvania, where they can't drill or frack at all. It's been now since 2010. So what do we got here? They need to be closed down. Permits need to stop. Why are they still being permitted? They're still being permitted. I don't care if you got who you are, what kind of a company, what kind of an industry, what kind of money. What company in the whole United States can have hundreds of DEP violations, environmental violations, millions in fines, and be allowed to still operate? Show me some other companies like that. This is an outrage to the citizens of the United States. We are basically, as far as I'm concerned, class three, third world country, class 3 citizens. They, we might as well move to Africa at this point. The way they treat the Africans, we're here. This is Africa number 2. So the thing is, the legislators, the AG have to work really hard to get rid of this situation and stop just patting people on the hand and just saying, okay, here's your latest $100,000 fine or your latest $25,000 fine. They need to be eliminated. If you can't do the job right, then you got to go. They should be kicked out of, especially the governor of Pennsylvania and all our legislators need to kick them out. And we have to stop having non-disclosures and all these gag orders so hardly anybody can speak. We got people here that are totally impacted by the dozens. They can't speak, they're gagged, and they're frightened. They're afraid out of their minds of being somehow Cabot and others are going to come after them. Look what's happened to me and others. We've been dragged to court. I've been in court 11 times. I've had civil violations, felony violations, criminal violations because of the industry, because of my desire to document them, bring citizen tours, which I've done hundreds of them.
And the injunction that's against.
I have a permanent injunction against me now for the rest of my life. Like, what is this? I'm an American citizen. As far as I'm concerned, I am not a full American citizen. I lost my rights. I can't assemble freely in my county. I can't speak freely. I can't walk anywhere in my county. I got to stay 100 feet away from Cabot installations. I have to stay 25 feet from their entrances and park 100 feet down the road. Otherwise, they can bring me in again for criminal trespass, and I can be fined. I've been fined. I've been arrested. I've been fingerprinted. I'm basically like a criminal in my county. Because why? I'm exposing the environmental violations next to our homes, which I consider outrageous. This is like unacceptable. You can't just put a rig anywhere. If I live next door to a farm, they put rigs over here and they put rigs on other big property. It's next door to us. And then what can happen to our water? How many people are suffering with water? So this is the big problem. It's immense. And when is it going to stop? We can play these games. We can have the AG now slap 15 charges on these people. It's only 10 years later. Thank you, AG, but it's a little bit like slow motion, like you're walking backwards. Please speed it up. So we got now Ray can speak and we can do other stuff. I'm good myself.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Hey, Ray.
Hey, Chris. I really appreciate you coming to the house. You're the only elected official that's ever been to my house. Not one representative from Tina Pickett. None of them have ever come to this house. They run away from us. Thank you for coming here.
Hey, man, I'm going to come back.
The only reason I'm going to be speaking, you come right back up, man. We got a court date on July 21st. Cabot has to be in court to represent themselves before 17 charges filed by the AG's office. But the only reason I'm here today speaking is because everybody else here is terrified, scared to death, and under gag orders. I don't care about your gag orders. Okay. They talk about methane. Well, I'm going to show you something. Y'all can't see it all well, but that is the official test result from Cabot Oil and Gas. The pre-test that was done on the bottom of this testing shows there was no methane in my water whatsoever. My water was pristine. I had nothing wrong here. Here's the test from DEP showing methane in all the houses of Dimmick on explosive levels of methane that was in our houses, plus the other 65 chemicals that are in there. I'm going to try to just PowerPoint this out real quick. Okay. These are 3 COSAs, okay, that I have. I don't have the first one, that were signed by DEP and Dan Dinges and the head legal counsel of Cabot Oil and Gas, stating they contaminated the water in Dimmick, Pennsylvania, and they did it and they agreed to it. And these are legal documents that were signed by them. I still don't have water, and nobody else here has water. ATSDR came in here and stated that there was, major problems here. These are the reports from ATSDR stating that our water supply is contaminated. Now, I mean, it's ridiculous how far this goes, okay? Here's more reports from ATSDR, EPA. They came here. EPA goes, oh, I got reports for you. They came back next day, go, oh, that's the wrong report. Here's the right report for you. They changed the numbers to show there was no contamination. ATSDR had to come in 5 years later and do the same study that EPA did to prove that the water was contaminated. So ATSDR did this little report here showing what we had to do for Dimmick well water. They also wrote a PowerPoint presentation that was done by EPA that was released. Then the best thing they had around did is put this right here. This is the report they did showing the contamination that was done and the groundwater contamination to Dimmick, Pennsylvania, and all the houses around here. These are all the test results. I've been harassed by Cabot Oil and Gas since 2008. I'm also an ex-gas worker. I drove one of the water trucks. So I know where a lot of the bodies are buried at. I've had rigs over here. I had one here for 2 years, shining lights into my house. I mean, the noise. You could read a book inside of my house, 2 o'clock in the morning, and be able to read that book without a light being on in my house. This went on for 2 years, plus the noise, the chemicals, and everything else. I've been harassed. I've been threatened. I got bullet holes in the front of my house. My truck was shot up in DC when we turned around and did the EPA hearings. I have been threatened more times than I care to count. I was just threatened again, right in town. It's just, it's mind blowing. I have spent 10 years into this fight of what's going on with the contamination and everything else that's going on here. And it's still going on. I mean, we got water trucks going by here right now and sand cans. I mean, we're still fracking, we're still drilling. There's no oversight whatsoever because of the pandemic. So these guys are up here running rampant, doing what they want. I've been in the court. They got me in a $5 million lawsuit right now in court. Amy Barrett, the attorney for Cabot Oil and Gas, stood there before the judge and stated, oh, he signed that gag order. He took that settlement. He has no rights whatsoever. We can come back and pollute and contaminate and do whatever we want, and he has no rights. Well, I'm sorry, but I do have rights, and you recontaminated the water here, so I'm speaking out. You got everybody to sign these orders under false pretenses. You turn around, we're hiding with DEP to come into a 9-mile moratorium that you're not supposed to be in. And you frack 7 wells inside that moratorium. We have 6 brand new water contaminations, and my water well went 100 times more. So yeah, I'm speaking out, and I'm here to say this. I fired my attorney in open court in this case. George Stark, the spokesperson for Cabot Oil and Gas, walked outside to the Associated Press and the TV cameras and stated, he's not after me or the other landowners here. They're just using me and the court system to get to the billionaire green groups. And he stated this to the press. This is the kind of stuff that's going on. You know, we did the meetings with the AG's office, everything else. We have the charges filed. They got up here in court here in Susquehanna County. And believe me, I am going to be right there screaming bloody murder. And I invite everybody to come here on July 21st and stand outside this court and demand justice for Dimmick. And these suckers are going to have to pay.
All right, Ray.
Let me ask you a question about what the Attorney General just did, and I want to give you a stat, so maybe you can react to it. And we put this into a letter that we wrote to Governor Wolf asking for him to put a stop to further permitting, because over that same period of June 1st to June 15th, when the Attorney General announced the counts against Range Resources and Cabot Oil and Gas, the DEP issued only 5 of them went to companies other than Range Resources and Cabot Oil and Gas. 6 of them went to Range, 17 went to Cabot. At the very same stretch of time, they were being charged criminally. Would you respond to that? Ray?
Well, I was just on the phone with the Attorney General's office, and I turned around, I told them they should not be getting permits at all. All their permits should be rescinded and can't do anything until this is heard into court. You know, basically, they have been filed with criminal charges, felony charges. You are criminals. You should not be able to run rampant in our county, be able to pollute us and just screw over the people.
Vera, do you have a comment on that?
I'm me, Vera. Or jump over here.
Yeah, jump over there. It's definitely, I agree with him. During a criminal investigation, during criminal charges, immediate stopping of those permits, especially for Cabot. Look how many are given to Cabot. Rescind any of those permits for this month at least, or the past month. Got to stop these guys in their tracks, and they're not taking it even seriously. They already made comments and statements that, oh, this is not possible. We haven't done this. We're so environmentally conscious. We're so environmentally careful. So relevance of the AG's comments and the grand jury has no meaning to that. That's
We're getting a nasty echo, Vera and Ray.
County.
Can somebody turn off the sound on their computer?
Over the state of Pennsylvania, besides the whole United States. This is a corporate takeover of the country.
Vera, we were getting a really terrible echo. I think I might have solved it by muting Ray for the moment, but can you speak again to the very last point you were making? I'm sorry.
On mute.
Do it on mine, Karen.
I don't know. You want me to repeat?
Just that very last part.
Saying
the echo got terrible.
Oh, the last part, which is we've been taken over by the gas and oil industry. This whole county, the legislators, they're all afraid to talk. They're afraid to speak out against the industry. And we've been taken over not only in our county, but over 20 counties in Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania has given up its rights of autonomy to this company, to these companies, and it's not right. They have violated so many things in our country and in our county. They need to be stopped. All the permits need to be stopped right now, especially for Cabot, because they are listed in the grand jury, in the indictments or the charges. So we have a big problem here. We have to be serious. We can't just play like Tootsie with these people. We can't just play games with these people. You got to be serious. And these people supposedly have power, the AG, the governor, and everybody else, the attorney generals. You better just use your power. Stop playing with these people. They know that they can just ignore you. They already made public statements that they're not responsible. The AG doesn't know what they're talking about. That they are such a good company and they're such good people that they only have our best interests at heart. Total bullshit.
And the other thing is too on this, all right, Chris Robb did it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chris has his hand raised. I was just going to turn it over to him.
I want to thank Chris for for trying to kill the gag orders on all gag orders against people of Pennsylvania should be released, rescinded, so people can speak out and really know what the hell is going on.
Right. I don't want to be gagged, and nobody should be gagged. This is the United States of America. This is America with our civil rights are being violated.
And Vera's got the right to go anywhere she wants.
Right.
She's a damn free person. She should not be stopped from being able to come to my house or anybody else's house because there happens to be a freaking well 200 feet from the front door of their house.
Right. I want to be able to drive wherever I want on public roads without them telling me you're in violation and contempt of court. Like, what the hell is this? What happened to this country? Get the
Hey, Vera, I
act
think you
together
should.
already.
I think I should bring up a bunch of legislators who are fired up because of you all doing the good thing, and we just surround you. Let's see if they try to arrest us too. I'm willing to do it. You guys have been. I'm sorry for jumping in, but
Arrest us.
you guys are wonderful. I want everyone on this call to hear me.
Let's just have one
Yeah.
speaker at a time, all right?
21st, man.
Because we're recording this and people are trying to listen. So one speaker at a time. Thank you.
All right. Hey, Ray, I want to come back out July 21st. I put it on my schedule here. I want to bring up other legislators with me. And I just want everyone on this call who's live and who'll see it recorded, that Craig, Vera, Ray, all of you all have inspired me. Ray came to my district, showed me the water, so-called water, that you all are infested with. And it inspired me to act and to learn more. I've learned from other people along the way. And look, not all of us are bought and sold by oil and gas. And I don't like bullies. Listen, I don't like the way they treated you. I brought my staff, my interns with me to see for ourselves the degradation of your life, of your community. And it goes against the very principles in our state constitution around environmental stewardship. And I don't care how big the corporation is. I don't care who they think they own. Listen, they're not going to intimidate me. I come from a long line of troublemaker, from abolitionists to civil rights activists to my own teenage sons. And I got to tell you, you all inspire me. So look, let's figure this out. I got to jump on another call, but I want to bring as many legislators as I can with me and let them try to shut us up and see what happens to them. And let me tell you this too, they're not always going to be in a position of power because things change very quickly and more people see the inherent evil of fracking. And it's not sexy, it's not economically sustainable, and it does inhumane things to communities like yours. So even though I don't live anywhere near you, I care about you just like I care about my neighbors. So I'm all in. Thank you so much. I got to run. If I can jump back on later, I will. But thank you so much for doing this. It's always.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, folks.
Everybody,
all right.
Love and peace.
Thank you. Vera, Ray, did you have more comments or do you have time for a couple of questions?
No, we got questions. Here's the good old water. It hasn't changed.
Oh yeah, we still have people getting water from Cabot 8 years up the road. The Morecams and Grosso hog farm. Every week they get water in their buffaloes, 3 buffaloes, and every week bottled water, still by Cabot. And others are also still getting water.
Oh, you got questions for us.
So,
with the questions there, Karen.
What's your comment? Because I know you're in an area, and I know Ray used to do work for the industry. So, what's your comment on this question about how stopping fracking would affect jobs? Has it affected worker health, for instance?
Stop jobs, and they're going to stop no jobs.
There are so many workers that have been affected. They're sick, they're ill. I've gone through 7 cancer surgeries in the past year and a half. Look at Randy Moyer. Randy is in horrible shape. I mean, the list can just go on different workers for health issues. When we went to work for them, we were never turned around and told that the silica sand was toxic. We were supposed to have respirators on. We never turned around and told the chemicals we were standing in and leaning against and on our feet were toxic, could kill us. I mean, these chemicals burnt through our boots, our clothes. I mean, I got rashes on my body and they're still there. And it's all from being in the chemical. And you got to stop and think about it. Most of the workers here aren't from here. They brought them in from Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama. I mean, there's even Alaskan license plates running around here that are working for the industry. They bring the workers in. There might be a 2 to 3% of locals that might be working for them. And believe me, they're on the bottom scale of the work.
I just want to make a comment too. I did research on this. If fracking stops, it will make no appreciable difference in our workforce. Fracking is from the list. It's less than 6% of our workforce. Everything else is higher than that. So they can leave the county with my glad permission, and you will not affect anything except that you'll help our clean air, our clean water hopefully will come back, and we can breathe again when you shut off the 55 plus gas emitting, toxic emitting compressor stations that are all over our county. We had none. How about 55? Oh, who would like to boast about that? So it's no problem. We will eliminate fracking. We have plenty of jobs here for these people. We had plenty of jobs before they invaded and took over.
And I also have a compressor. I have a compressor station a mile down the road, the Teal compressor station. I have to listen to every night. I either got to have the TV on or the radio on in my room to drown out the noise of the compressor station and the smell that comes down from the station into the valley here. It lays here. So I've had breathing problems. I mean, you can't even be out in the yard at different times. They do a blow off. You can't even be in your yard or do a barbecue. I mean, Craig has been here. We were doing a barbecue the one time. They blew off down there. The smell was so bad. Everybody had to get out of the backyard of the house. We had to come back in the house and close all the windows up in the middle of summer.
Ray,
So,
you've had problems with.
It's real fun living when you got.
You've had problems with light pollution too, haven't you? Have you had problems with light pollution? I believe
Yes,
there were
severely
spotlights.
for 2 years. Yes, for two years they had a rig across the street, and we had I think there was 7 sets of portable lights up there. Every one of those lights were pointed strictly at my house. Not one of those lights were on the pad whatsoever. It was strictly to intimidate me, to try to shut me up. They had diesel generators running constantly, and the fumes came right off that pad, came right down right here into the house. So you always smelled the diesel smoke and everything else. You got to remember, Costello 1 is 500 feet from the front door of my house. So everything they did was intimidation because I'm speaking out. They've gotten everybody else scared and shut up here endemic. Well, I don't intimidate. I don't run, and I'm scared, and I'm going to continue to keep speaking.
Well, thank you so much for. Do you have a final comment, Vera? We're just about at 3 o'clock.
I hope to live to see this industry out, and that I live to see that all of us have our freedoms back to be able to speak and to be able to move around the county. And I want to live to see that and to be a full American citizen again and have our civil rights back, as well as everybody else in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And just remember all, I'm still in the middle of a $5 million lawsuit against Cabot Oil and Gas. Is suing me for $5 million for disparagement, slander, and breaking the gag order. Boo hoo hoo.
Well, thank you so much, Ray. I know you and I go way back, and I appreciate that you continue to speak out, both of you. And so with that, we actually have more impacts to talk about, because now we're moving over to the Pennsylvania wilds. No part of the state has been left out of this. So thank you so much, Vera and Ray. And now we're going to turn it to Barb Jarmoska from the group RDA, who's going to talk about the PA wild. So Barb, if you're able to get on the screen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
everybody. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you for all of you who are tuned in on the Zoom meeting and on Facebook. And I feel like, well, you should all stand up and stretch or something. Take a deep breath at the very least. It's been a long haul, but I really appreciate it. This is my first attempt to do a PowerPoint on Zoom. So I'm going to try to share my screen and hope for the best here. Okay, I think we did it. Can you see that? Can everybody see that? Yes? Can you hear me? Yes?
Yep.
Sorry, I was muted. We can hear you, yes, and we can see your screen.
Oh, hooray. All right, it worked. So I have lots of slides. This is a visual montage from my picture files of the life that I have lived here for the last 11 years. And although it may be true, uh-oh, it's not working. Come on. I'm not able, there we go. Although it may be true that a picture is worth 1,000 words, no picture can possibly equal the multi-sensory experience of actually being in the forest. For me, the door to the woods is the door to the temple, wrote poet Mary Oliver. I understand those words. They are part of my lifetime of lived experience in and beside the Pennsylvania wilds. I'm not to you today as an expert. I'm not a forester or an arborist or a biologist. I am a citizen of Pennsylvania, a retired special ed teacher and a business owner, a mother and a grandmother, and someone who treasures and reveres the rapidly dwindling wild places in Penn's woods. In the 30 minutes I've been allotted today, I want to share scenes of the wilds with you, showing both the beauty and the destruction of that portion of the PA wilds that I am fortunate enough to live beside. I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like to live in the wilds. Those are frog eggs for anybody who doesn't know. Where my front yard ends, the Pennsylvania wilds begins. This picture was taken from my front yard. Access to my property is via a no-outlet gravel road that dead ends into the Loyalsock State Forest. In 1933, my grandfather bought 20 acres with an old cabin and a barn bordering what is now known as the PA Wilds. That's an eagle in my sycamore tree. As a child, I didn't miss indoor plumbing or air conditioning in that cabin beside the Loyalsock Creek. Those are bears in my front yard, where we spent our summers. I now live here year-round in a home I built in 2007 before I had ever heard the words Marcellus Shale. I do have indoor plumbing now, but still no desire for air conditioning. I prefer to rely on open windows and big shade trees. The memories that my family has made on this land are priceless, and my grandchildren are the 5th generation to run in the meadow, swim in the creek, climb the trees, fish in the stream, and play in the nearby woods. In our increasingly transient society, roots this deep are precious and rare. My appalled, angry, and admittedly frightened response to the gas industry invasion of the PA wilds began in 2010, when a parade of trucks spewing diesel fumes rumbled up the no-outlet road that on. They were en route to their leased COP tracks in the Loyalsock State Forest, which is a part of the PA wilds. The trail shown here in the wilds that we love to hike is no longer just a trail. Dump trucks carrying fist-sized gravel and heavy equipment transformed this forest trail into a forest road, now gated off and posted with trespass warnings carrying severe penalties. In my neighborhood, as in so many places in land that legally belongs to the citizens, now carries grim warnings of the consequences of trespassing. When the industrial equipment passed my driveway, and that is, you're looking at my driveway, look out my driveway in this picture, the ground shook. Oftentimes I had to wait 15 or 20 minutes just to leave or to come home. There was a diesel truck or a flag car pretty much permanently blocking my driveway for a while. I also walked out to the mail one day and was surprised to find a porta potty set up on my land. Life in my neighborhood has forever changed at the hands of an industry that is permitted to trespass on my private land and to remove millions of gallons of water for fracking from the Loyalsock, a beautiful creek that carries the designation exceptional value. Named PA's River of the Year in 2018, the Loyalsock Creek begins in the endless mountain region of the PA Wilds and travels 64 miles on its way to the Susquehanna River. The beloved Loyalsock Creek provides recreation for hundreds of fishermen, kayakers, inner tubers, swimmers, and summer cabin dwellers, offering clear water that to this day supports abundant fish, amphibian, birds, and wildlife. Clear water the gas industry now pumps out of the creek by the millions of gallons to be mixed with toxic chemicals and forced at great pressure through boreholes a mile deep and miles long to release methane trapped in the Marcellus Shale. Unbeknown to us, the gas industry, as most of you know, perhaps there's a few legislators on this call that do not. The gas industry was carefully mapping out its strategy for years, lobbying for exemptions and the repeal of crucial laws and regulations that would have provided us with some measure of protection. Because of their early secret long-range plans, the once special place we call home is now known as the Marcellus Sacrifice Zone. The forests of the PA Wilds that surround me belong to all the citizens of Pennsylvania. These woods once stood as the door to the temple, and also as a perfect example of what Article 120, Section 27 of our state constitution calls aesthetic values of the environment. The aesthetic beauty of special places throughout the PA Wilds is under assault and gravely threatened. Our neighbors to the north and south, as you know, have placed a ban on fracking. I will remind you that the New York Department of Health concluded that, quote, the overall weight of evidence has demonstrated the likelihood that adverse health outcomes and environmental impacts from high volume fracturing cannot be prevented. We have just spent 2 hours hearing about these adverse health outcomes and environmental impacts. The state of Maryland has permanently banned fracking, also based on the potential for adverse public health and environmental impacts. We are in the middle of that sandwich, and we are the doers of the evil deeds. At this point, there are literally thousands of municipalities, regions, and entire countries that have banned unconventional drilling for methane due to the growing preponderance of evidence for harm and the long-term negative consequences. Yet here in PA, we continue down this short-sighted and dangerous path. I certainly hope that if the folks from Ireland are still on the meeting, that they will ban the import of LNG. Here in Pennsylvania, including the publicly owned lands of the PA Wilds, tank trucks line up at our rivers and creeks 24/7 to deliver water to well pads. To date, in Pennsylvania alone, the gas industry has used 99,700,000,000 gallons of water in the fracking process. The industry will top the 1 trillion gallon mark of once fresh water this month. On the other side of the fracking process is one of the biggest challenges of the industry, frack waste. To date, from this once fresh water, much of it removed via consumptive use permits from the Loyalsock and Pine Creeks and other watersheds in the PA Wilds. As of this week, 17,704,207,920 gallons of unconventional liquid fracking waste has been produced in the Pennsylvania Marcellus Shale. What could possibly go wrong? A lot. To date, DEP has cited the gas industry with over 16,000 violations of laws and regulations. For the most part, every violation carries with it a risk to both human health and the environment. And yet, as the Better Path Coalition has recently proclaimed, criminal violators continue to apply for and receive more permits to drill and frack more wells. Vera and Ray talked about this just moments ago. Budget dust fines and a complete lack of accountability continue to threaten the PA Wilds and the citizens of this state. Well pads near streams flood. Tank trucks carrying chemicals leak and sometimes close rural roads, including those that access the PA Wilds, like this one on my drive home, where a 10-mile-long strip of fracking chemicals was spilled and then hosed off into the Loyalsock Creek. The following day, the headline in the local paper that did not have a picture of PennDOT workers in full hazmat gear read, quote, Unknown chemical leaks from gas industry tank truck. The subheadline stated, no harm was done to the environment. Oh, really? What about the hazmat suits and the part about unknown and the fact that an exceptional value trout stream and the PA wilds were literally a few yards away? Cement casings fail and well bores leak. If you follow the violations issued by DEP, it is certainly my hope that those elected to represent me would do so, you will learn that cement is the gas driller's most frequent failure. Over 6% of the cement casings in well bores leak immediately, causing significant release of methane and other VOCs into the environment. We do not yet know the long-term consequences of the thousands upon thousands of cement-sealed drill bores now piercing our aquifers. We do know that cement fails, if not immediately, 60% in the first 2 decades and 100% over time. These well bores are not hollow or empty. They contain the same toxic flowback that is being hauled by the billions of gallons and forced into injection wells. 100 years from now, when all the underground cement has crumbled, what will the impact be on our aquifers, on our rivers and streams, on the PA wilds and the wild flora and fauna these acres now sustain? Dr. Tony Ingraffia of Cornell University has been sounding this alarm for many years now, believing that the promise of a total lack of wellbore integrity a century from now may indeed be the single most horrific consequence of our current rush to drill. We will all be gone by then, but our legacy of destruction will live on. When it comes to cement failures and water quality, consider this. There is currently a complete ban on fracking in the Delaware water basin. Why is that? Is it because the risk of contaminating a watershed that provides drinking water to 15 million people is just too great to take a chance on? Here in the Susquehanna watershed, people like Ray and Vera and many others whose water have been contaminated just don't count. Well pad spills happen with disturbing frequency. For well pads under 5 acres in size, Pennsylvania DEP says no erosion or sediment plan is required. Is it any wonder Pennsylvania, especially in the wilds, has so many well pads measuring in the 4.75 to 4.9 acre size range? No silt snakes or plan is required for the possibility of heavy rains, floods, and runoff containing spilled fracking chemicals and diesel fuel. In my neighborhood in 2018, an estimated 55,000 gallons of frack water spilled from this well pad, ironically named the TLC well site. There was 4 wells on the pad when it happened. There is now 8. The toxic fluid ran downhill and directly into the Loyalsock Creek. On its approximate 2-mile path, the chemicals flooded this little tributary that runs through a rural neighborhood where children play, and frightened residents gathered to question DEP and worried about their private drinking water. The tadpoles, frogs, and in the deeper shady pools, native trout that once lived there were all threatened by this spill. At the hand of the gas industry, the forests of the PA wilds are increasingly fragmented. Brooke Lenker from Frack Tracker talked a lot about this. The total land disturbance for a single well pad averages 30 acres. This includes the land that must be cleared for the pad itself, as well as access roads and the infrastructure needed to transport, compress, and odorize the gas. Based on the vegetation distribution of our region, we can expect that 22 of those acres on average are currently forested land, many of which are in the PA wilds. Taking all of these factors into consideration, a total disturbance of up to 200,000 acres in the Susquehanna River Basin may well be a conservative estimate, depending on energy choices we make in the coming years. Fragmenting of forest land will be with us for generations to come, as replacing 100-year-old trees does not happen quickly. To date, 95% of the acreage sacrificed to gas drilling remains an industrial site. It has not been restored at all, nor really can it be. Fragmentation of forests invites invasive species. The widespread problem of invasive species across the United States costs taxpayers more than $120 billion in damages every single year. In July of 2017, a study on gas drilling and invasive species was conducted by Penn State University and published in the Journal of Environmental Management. The research was funded by DCNR and showed that gas drilling in Pennsylvania has indeed spurred an increase in the colonizing of invasive plant species, especially in the PA wilds. Seeds of invasives like phragmites, also known as common reed, as shown here, bush honeysuckle, Japanese knotweed, and stilt grass, and more are being brought onto well pads on the tires and undersides of the thousands of trucks that visit the sites and the gravel delivered to build pads and roads. Invasive species rob the fish, plants, and wildlife of both nutrients and the space needed to grow. The vast reserves of methane in the Marcellus and Utica shale layers are in the early stages of development, yet this research reports that invasive species have already made, quote, significant inroads into the ecology of the PA wilds and are now actively damaging native species. Gas drilling jeopardizes already at-risk and endangered species. The flora and fauna of the PA wilds is under assault by the gas industry. Millions of small, colorful songbirds that live in the tropics for most of the year venture north each spring to Pennsylvania to nest in our deep, quiet forests that are now being transformed into industrial zones for methane extraction. Most of these neotropical birds cannot nest successfully in small woodlots or fragmented forests. They need the PA wilds. Their very survival depends on large, undisturbed tracts of core forest far removed from any permanent edge, such as a gas pad, access road, or pipeline right-of-way. Well pad roads in the PA wilds open corridors for predators, such as raccoons, possums, and skunks, which significantly increases the failure of the nests of these wild migratory birds. When the contiguous forest canopy is broken, sun and wind then impacts soil moisture and changes the insect population that provides critical protein for newly hatched baby birds. The Native American wisdom that proclaims, touch one strand and the whole web trembles, surely applies to what is happening today in the PA wilds. I want to show you just a few of the endangered species threatened by unconventional methane extraction in our wilds. The scarlet tanager, northern flying squirrel, white trout lily, short-eared owl, brown nose and long-eared bat that are also threatened by other viruses. Purple rocket flower, 4 different species of freshwater mussels. The eastern hellbender salamander, which ironically has been named Pennsylvania's state amphibian, mostly by legislators who own leased land and have become millionaires as a result of shale gas development. I know this because the effort began right here in my county. The red-bellied dace, the American bog turtle, the black chin shiner, and the eastern spadefoot toad. Sadly, this is not a complete list. For each well pad, an average of 30 acres of forest is cleared. A single acre of forest sequesters 158,000 pounds of organic carbon. Thus, if located in a forested area, a single well pad is responsible for the release of 4 million 740,000 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. Multiply this by the thousands of wells the industry hopes to drill in the Marcellus and Utica shales of Pennsylvania, and the impact on climate change without even considering the billions of tons of escaping methane and VOCs is truly staggering. I would like to leave you with one final thought to ponder. There is an utterly false yet widely accepted fallacy that economics and the environment are competing forces. For one to win, the other must lose. This foundational belief drives political will, and we are caught in a system that privatizes profits and socializes costs. Corporations, in this case, the fossil fuel industry and its investors, pocket the profits while the tremendous costs of environmental degradation and the health consequences suffered by those in harm's way, some of whom you have heard from today, are borne by individuals and families and taxpayers both now and for generations to come. Researchers point to the fact that over 9 million Americans now face greater risk of life-threatening cancer because they live in areas directly impacted by the toxic emissions of nearby oil and gas sites. What is the financial, social, and emotional cost of just one case of cancer, much less 9 million? Lycoming County, where I live, is now home to 1,671 permitted gas wells. We are a rural county, yet ranked 7th in the state in per capita cases of childhood cancers. What is the value of ecological services, including carbon sequestration provided by the PA Wilds? What is the forest's value to human health, both physical and mental? What are the consequences of ignoring the rights of nature? If you are a legislator and you take away nothing else from this amazing presentation that Better Path has put on today, let this be your takeaway. Research clearly shows that when all is said and done, protecting the environment is in the end an economic win. If, as elected officials, you can ignore the din of industry lobbyists who preach otherwise and fully embrace this win-win truth, sustainability can actually become a priority instead of a politically dirty word. Pennsylvania lawmakers could obey the Constitution, protect the PA Wilds, and choose a better path, one that leads to a future of renewable energy and good-paying green jobs for Pennsylvania citizens, as well as the promise of a brighter future for our children and grandchildren. There is a way forward. There is a better path, but time is running out. I look at my grandchildren and believe that such a shift of consciousness and political will is truly their last great hope. We need to keep it wild. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barb. I really appreciate all those comments you just made at the end, because it is so important that protecting our environment is prioritized. We are really, truly running out of time, as you say. And there was a question specifically to you about proposed water and gas pipelines along the Loyalsock. Is there any specific update you have?
Oh, golly, that is our big fight right now. Unfortunately, where I live in the valley, there are steep slopes on both sides, and the ridges of both the mountains to the east and west of the valley, the Loyalsock generally runs north-south. The mountaintops are leased. It's part of the Pennsylvania Wilds, lots of COP tracks up there. And what happened was there are currently no pipeline cuts on the steep slopes for pretty much the entire 64 miles of the Loyalsock Valley. What happened was that 2 years ago, PGE, who owns a lot of those tracks, picked them up from Exxon. It's a long story. You know how they flip well pads. From the tops of the mountains down to the creek itself is for the most part private land. So that when I say the PA Wilds are in my backyard, it's my backyard after I get through a couple of neighboring properties. PA wilds actually are in my front yards on the other side of the creek, because that's all Pennsylvania wilds. But what PGE did was it purchased 100 acres of private land so that it owns or leases contiguously from mountaintop to mountaintop down the steep slope. They don't own the creek, but on the immediate both banks of the creek. So in a giant U. And now what they are trying to do is get a permit for the third water withdrawal in the creek and to run both gas water lines and gas gathering lines. And we have been in that fight for 2 years trying to stop them. So after 10 years of battling this industry, I am appalled to say that my next door neighbor is PGE. They bought the 90 acres that surround my land to the north and west. So that's where we are. We have groups fighting it. We have a local group. RDA is backing us up. We're working with an attorney, and you all know how that is. Those of you who are on this call who don't know how it is, who might be legislators, who might be tuning in, it is a nightmare, as you have been hearing for the last 2.5 hours. That's where we are. Trying to save the loyal sock. Because once they do that first cut, once they run that first pipeline, and I could show you that I have the view shed in one of those slides, but I didn't stop to tell this story when I was running through it. Then they will use that as a precedent. This is a precedent-setting decision that DCNR and DEP and even SRBC is about to make. And what the gas industry is so sneaky. They're such weasels. They had, as you probably know, SRBC does not turn down consumptive water use permits. They just don't. So they got their consumptive water use permit, and their plan was to put a sieve-covered pipe into the loyal sock to draw out their, I really do forget how many millions of gallons a day they're asking for. The consumptive use permit that is literally less than 4 miles down the road from me on the same creek, I think theirs is 15 million gallons a day. But in any event, they realized that pipe in the creek was probably going to be a problem during low flow times. They changed what they were asking for to trench the creek, to bring in bulldozers and to submerge their water withdrawal, which means muddy water everywhere downstream from where they're working for a couple of months. And it also means that they will be able to draw more water even at times of extremely low flow. So that's our battle right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Barb. And we're just about at the half hour. So maybe we should all do what you recommended at the beginning, and everybody stand up and take a stretch before we go into our last half hour. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. And because I had a chance to think about it for 2 hours, I do have an answer to your question about what should we do.
Oh, please, if you have time.
Yeah, I don't know. Do I have time? I don't have a clock.
Oh, you have time. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. 3 things that I came up with. Number one, and this is directed, of course, especially to legislators, but to all of us who vote and who are in this fight together. And I thank you all for that. Number one, believe the science. We are living in an era where science and research is both abundant and valid and yet ignored and somehow has become optional. The human suffering and economic consequences of worsening climate change are mind-numbing, but having little effect on legislative efforts. Number 2, and this has been talked about, hold corporations accountable. Vera is right. Slaps on the wrist and budget dust fines don't change behavior. End all permits for chronic criminal violators now. And number 3, we have got to fund the future. End the subsidies for fossil fuels, petrochemicals, and plastics, and invest in renewables, sustainable energies, and good jobs. Use those taxpayer subsidies to truly forge a better path. That's my answer.
Thank you so much, Barb. Thank you. And I can't stress enough important those 3 points are. I'm completely with you. So thank you for articulating them. And now for our big finish. It's not just fracking, although you're going to learn about a very specific kind of pipeline. We have pipeline issues across the entire state, and this one largely has to do with the construction of the pipeline still at this point. You're going to hear from Chris DiGiulio, who's with the Upper Euclid Residents for Safety, and Laura Snyder with Edgemont Community Safety Group. So Chris and Laura.
All right. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Sound check. All right, great. So here we are. So we're actually live on scene at a actual site that has been an area of very, very big concern to this area. I'm in West Whiteland Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Of course, it's going to start raining and thundering. So we're still going to stay out here and do this. This is Laura Snyder. We're both dogs in Chester and Delaware County. And we basically are watching Energy Transfer Partners building the Mariner East pipeline. And what we do is we go out and document their behaviors, because like what they say doesn't match what they are actually doing. I want to tell you one thing. When we got here, there was about, I don't know, 10, 15 workers out. And as soon as I rolled up, all the workers were called in. But it might be also because of the storm. So I'll give them that. However, it's interesting.
Yeah,
like
it happened before, though. We don't take it that.
Yes. And so, Laura, if you would give a little brief detail of who you are and like what you do.
I'm Laura Snyder, and I'm a co-founder of the Edgemont Community Safety Group, and also a member of Del Chesco United for Pipeline Safety, and being kind of helping just watchdogging what's going on in especially Delaware County area. PK's, big in Chester County, so we try to work as a team and support each other and back each other up when we see an incident, or just have to keep an eye on these guys because something going on every week.
Absolutely. In fact, every day.
Every day.
As we drove here, we had a sinkhole in West Whiteland Township. I don't know what number that would be. 8, 9, I don't know. So as we were driving here, it was kind of interesting that we saw a sinkhole. They're drilling in the middle of a road, which they said was stable, but why are they drilling? So let's give you a little background on where I'm at right now. The Mariner East, of course, as you know, is as a Frac Tracker was very kind in explaining to everybody what Mariner East is. It's a pipeline project, I would say. It's a project because there's several pipelines, and it is carrying the byproducts of fracking, which is the NGLs, natural gas liquids. We call them, I say, as a chemist, of course, we're going to have this. Can you hear me now? We have a generator going now. So it's highly volatile liquids, right? Awesome. It's a waterproof. So it's highly volatile liquids, and that is we're carrying butane, ethane, and propane, and mainly it's the ethane for like petroplastics. This is going across 350 miles of Pennsylvania. They're utilizing what's called horizontal directional drilling, which is an abnormally, I would say, hazardous process, especially when you're dealing with the geology that we have, the hydrogeology, which I will explain what hydrogeology is in a minute. But let me tell you that the Mariner East has basically done horrid things to neighborhoods in a population dense area. So this byproduct comes across our state, and like I said, they use horizontal directional drilling. That's because they're going through population dense areas, and like we're all built up, so they had to figure out how to get this pipeline through. As Frac Tracker said, they used eminent domain. They used some really, really interesting. They got eminent domain. They got a public utility status in a really shady way. I'm not going to go fully into that. What I really want to tell you about is where I'm standing, because I want to get it in before it rains on me hard. And so this is called, I'm going to switch my camera around. So this is Lisa Drive in West Whiteland Township, okay? And Karen, actually what I would like you to do, if you would play so it's quiet here, besides that generator, it's quiet. I would like you to play the video that is the hammer drill video, because this is what we've heard through COVID days in our isolation by the Mariner East, because, they're an essential business. Would you please play that? Thank you, Karen, by the way.
You're muted, Karen.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get to the right thing. Pardon me.
Google Drive.
There it is. This
Thank
one?
you, Karen. Sorry, guys. It's what happens in the field.
It's.
And if it doesn't play, that's okay.
Is this the one, the hammer drill?
Yes, that is exactly the one.
All right. Taking a second. I thought it was already ready to go.
It's all right. I don't know if it has sound on it. It's 27 seconds. Okay. So what you're hearing. So what you guys are hearing there, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, so what you're hearing there is called a pneumatic hammer drill. That's the part of the horizontal directional drilling process. And the reason why they're doing that right now in the middle of isolation, which is seriously loud, as you saw, there's a decibel meter that was running there, and it was going up past 85. I can't even explain to you how deafening that was. That was happening while parents were homeschooling their children every single day. That is what we had to listen to. And the reason why they're doing that is because, well, they screwed up massively. And now they're hammer drilling doing the right thing. This is an example of what happens when you don't do the right thing. This is Lisa Drive. Lisa Drive had 4 sinkholes. 5 homes here have lost, 5 families have lost their homes. Sunoco owns Lisa Drive. So these are all bought out because actually they let these people stay in their houses unsafe for 2 years. And then they just settled recently because they want to get their second pipe in. They actually ended up drilling, and you can see there's a gap over there. That's a railroad track, actually, Amtrak. It goes to Philly, and it also carries petroleum products, too. We've watched freight trains come on, and they're drilling under that. There is Martic fault line here, and that means that there's 2 bedrocks that meet up with each other and a gap. They drilled through that. One is limestone on the other side of the tracks. This is schist. It's crumbly. And what happened was when they drilled, they basically destroyed the rock bed here and created a sinkhole. And Karen, if you would show the
can we full screen here, Karen?
The overview. It is number 1 or number 2. I'm sorry, file. It says an image of a drone. It's a drone image of like where I'm standing, basically. So I can show you a overhead view of what we see here. So that is Lisa Drive. You see the homes. Where I'm standing is at the bottom of the screen. So if you go to the next image, that is what I was talking about. That is what happened when they drilled here. And this is called an inadvertent return or a frack out of their drilling mud, which is bentonite. It's what they use to lubricate the drill head while they drill through the rock. Now, all that brown stuff is bentonite, and it created also a sinkhole in the middle of a drill path right behind my friend's home. Next one, please. All right, this is a video. This is what happened after one of the nights of pullback we witnessed. My friend woke up in the morning and he had a second sinkhole. So they continued to drill. Then they're like, we're fine. We're going to continue to pull back the pipe because we need to get it in the ground. And what resulted was a second sinkhole.
Sorry, it's taking a little while to download.
Right.
I thought it was ready.
That's fine. I can always continue the story.
Yeah, keep telling stories.
So mainly, so there's another sinkhole, and that just is a video of the sinkhole. So you can see, like, it actually, he woke up, and like, if you had a dog or a child, I was witness to this pullback and they really kind of act like everything's fine. He wakes up. If his dog went out, he could have lost his dog in this. By the way, there's no fencing at the time. That's what Sunoco put up around it on his own property.
Who found the sinkhole?
The sinkhole was found by the homeowner.
Of course.
Yes. after they had one sinkhole, they stopped even thinking. And then you know what happened next? 2 other sinkholes exposing the now active Mariner East 1 pipeline, which if you can see right here, if you can see my screen, which I'm not sure you can, but where I was showing you, it runs right in between where they're drilling the new pipe under the ground and in between the houses. They exposed an active pipeline.
This is 8-inch right here.
Right. I don't even think they can see my screen, but thank you, Karen. It would be the next image. And after these images, I'm gonna so that is basically the 2. And if you go to the next image, you'll see the exposed Mariner 1. That happened twice on the corner of the home that I showed you guys in the beginning. That happened twice. And they stopped the pipeline temporarily, but not. These people have lived in this neighborhood with like active pipelines going, and this really, I would say, reckless process happening. This is one of the most baffling projects I've ever seen. And you can come back to me now, Karen. Like, I will come back to images with Laura Snyder in a minute. But I do want to show and reiterate what I'm seeing in front of me here to show you how these homes, so the home right here in the corner, it actually was on the very corner of their porch, the exposed Mariner 1 sinkhole. This was allowed to continue, and they still keep getting permitted. I think we heard a similar story from other people. Why did Cabot, why is Ranger Source still allowed to have a permit? While they are actually serial offenders. They're criminals. They're labeled criminals. Why is Mariner East still allowed to go and get permits when they do not know how to, when they do not do the proper geophysical studies prior to drilling in with an abnormally hazardous process in a very geologically unique area? Why? So in Mariner East, our thing is, number one, what is right now? What is right now happening in the Mariner is that people are dealing with the construction aspect, the installation of this pipeline. And most people can't even understand how they got in the main. That story I can share out later. I don't want to get into that because it's very complicated. But this is the what is. This is what happens when they're constructing. Imagine how people feel when they understand that this is a highly volatile liquid under 1480 PSI and in 80-year-old pipes that are cobbled together. Imagine how people feel when they find out these things are becoming active. And this is where I'm going to segue into Laura Snyder, who is actually a member of Del Chesco, who performed a risk assessment about the what ifs. What if this pipe explodes? What is the blast radius? So I'm going to hand it over to Laura. In fact, I'll just like turn around. Yeah, I'll video you.
Okay. So just another thing, this is 3 years now, what this area looks like. You know, this is what we're still dealing with. So my first introduction to Sunoco was in April 2015, and I was driving down my road in Edgemont, and in the middle of the night saw a bunch of people in a stream with headlamps on, and I thought, what the heck is going on? So I pulled over. It was midnight, and I said, what's going on? They said, oh, nothing, ma'am. We're just doing routine sewer work. And I said, oh, sewer work? That's interesting because we're all on well here and we all have septics. So that was my first introduction to Sunoco in that time. So after that, we just saw more lies and lies and lies continue. So at that point, I realized I needed to understand what was going on with this pipeline and this process. For Edgemont, one thing that's unique for our town is we've had 3 past petroleum leaks from Mariner East 1, and they were in 1988, 1992, and the last one in 2015. Gasoline, petroleum, huge spills. So Sunoco has decided through this HDD drilling process that they are going to drill exactly in these same spots where this contamination occurred. So this was reported to the DEP. We, all, oppose this, and doesn't matter. Still goes right through. So in Edgemont, we are still on wells there, and we're seeing a lot of well contamination. We have one resident, her name is Eqt Park, and she's on what's called a water buffalo, which is essentially just a large trash bag filled with water that she's keeping in her garage right now, to just have clean water for her young daughter and her family. She's got no assistance from legislators, from government, from the DEP. Sunoco continues to deny that they have any, responsibility for her having petroleum, benzene, and MTBE.
And so does Eqt Park have an actual easement, or is she under contract with Sunoco at all?
No, not at all. Yeah, she's not on the easement. She's past the 450 feet, which is what Sunoco has agreed to test for the wells based on past settlement with Clean Air Council. A lawsuit before that, they weren't even testing anybody's, could just go through this.
So there's no baseline testing. So when people came up with contamination, they were unable to prove that it was Sunoco.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're past the 450 feet, forget it. So she has passed that point, and they said, nope, this doesn't have anything to do with us. So that's what we continue to fight for. We had sinkholes that occurred. We had a huge one.
And if you, Karen, if you could put on the, if you could put images on for Lois Snyder's, it would be SP. The first one of the SP's images, and it'll show exactly what she's talking about in Edgemont, very similar to these.
Yeah, I would say that's the Lisa Drive in Delaware County. It occurred at Slayton Park, and this is in actually Middletown, which is right next to Edgemont. And it's a park where, people play soccer and children play, and everybody walks their dogs every day. And essentially, this is what's going on there now. In November of 2019, we had one sinkhole, another one open up, and they're filling it at night. I think we have another picture of the grout trucks at night.
So what we see here right now is, yes, that's the easement. That is Slayton Park. And if you see Slayton Park, what you saw there was, it was right next to soccer fields, as Laura was saying. Right next to soccer fields, and there was how many sinkholes there?
At least 4.
Are there any active pipes located near them?
Yes, same as this, because they were all put on the same easement. So we have, an active 8-inch, 90-year-old pipe there. We have now the 12-inch Fracking pipe. Now there's, trying to get the 16 and the 20.
And did they stop those pipelines, those active pipelines that were in the proximity of unstable geology?
They did not.
Okay, interesting. That's what we deal with.
Concern. Yep. So the next picture, you can see the grout trucks filling at night.
Yeah, so switch to the next picture. Click, as Leann was saying. Click. All right, so there's a grout check. So this is kind of what they do. They're a little operational, nighttime work.
This is why you need watchdogs, because this happened at night. We counted about 24 grout trucks to fill this area. And then Sunoco, reported later that they didn't know where the grout went, that they still had to fill more of the holes. So then they had to dig up the road, which is Forge Road. And as you can see, the whole road, was destroyed.
Right. So that's exactly what's on the screen right now, everybody. People woke up in the morning and they were like, oh, sinkhole's fine, it's stable. And they woke up to their road being torn up.
Yeah.
Without any answers, and
with the active pipes still running, active live under it.
All right, and if you click again,
like a school bus, I think in one of the pictures you can see.
Yeah, it wasn't the one.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know which one it was because I can't see very well. But this is where they're doing what's called potholing, and they're like exploring utility under the ground, so they're actually looking for what did we do? That happens frequently here, but this is the road next to a ballpark where weren't the kids still playing soccer? They're allowing.
Yes.
Yeah, that was before COVID.
Was never shut down.
Never shut down.
The 90-year-old pipes are still flowing. The explosive material.
Right. And then the next spot is Valley Road, right? Another sinkhole spot.
Yeah. So this was all in the same month. This was all November 2019.
It
was just like a week apart. And further up the road in Edgemont, they did the pullback of the pipes. They did a dual pullback in 16 and 20, which was not on their DEP permits to do that. They changed the permits in the last minute.
And the next one.
Approval. And they did a real quick pullback, and in you know, then we had another sinkhole open up.
Right.
Same thing, and it occurred late at night, and within 24 hours, it was huge. So we still have not gotten any results of the geophysical testing done on that area.
Yeah. So we can get back to our screen where Laura and I are. Karen, thank you so much for helping us on the images. In the field, it's kind of hard, so I really appreciate this. This is kind of new to a lot of people, including us. So like being in the field, doing a virtual tour, it's kind of neat. This is kind of what we do every day, though. We're always out here. We're watching their actions. We're watching their behaviors. And so, as you said, there's no geophysical testing done. And one of the biggest issues, if everybody's, I don't know how many people are very familiar, but Governor Wolf is actually under FBI investigation for, number one, pushing the permits through, the DE permits through before they did the proper studies. Now, when they came up to homeowners here, they said, it's 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks to install it, and you'll never know we're here. It's kind of a joke around here when we say that. We'll never know you're here. Well, 4 years later, where parents and families, where this pipeline splits in between their houses, their kids haven't been able to see their friends for 4 years. Imagine being a 5-year-old who grows up and doesn't get to, like, they have to go a mile around. No kid's able to walk a mile around. The parents are going to let them do that. They used to go through the backyard 4 years running. And they're still getting permits. It's rubber stamping, similar to FERC.
And we have a couple up right now. There's a huge one in Delaware County at the Turnbridge Department, which is under reeval right now.
Yes.
And there was supposed to be a public hearing, and that was canceled due to COVID. And you know, we still don't know if that's just going to be online. What's going on with that?
So what?
But anyway, at Turnbridge, they had what we call a frack out, and they forced 7 buildings right next to it, with bentonite, you know, all these chemicals spread, benzene all over the property.
Yes.
For, I believe it was like 2.5 weeks. And they actually have litigation coming up, the homeowners there.
So one of the things we're seeing is Turnbridge is not just like pipelines coming through. So when you have pipelines, you have the other infrastructure, the pump stations. We have flaring in pump stations because when they need to vent, there's always, so, you know, let's talk about that radiation aspect. Ethane's one of the molecules that can carry the radionuclides, I think, I believe. Justin Noble has done a great thing. And so we're trying to say, like, we've watched with fracking, what happened to fracking. This is a lesson to be learned. So here, we're trying to, like, basically educate our community about there's no invisible wall that stops the water from being contaminated in your area. There's no invisible wall that stops the air from being polluted. We have it here. It is already here. It's just been so covertly placed under our noses without many people knowing with their busy lives. So that's kind of what we try to do here, is educate people, because basically this pipeline has had so many violations. They have 3 criminal investigations on the company itself. Why is Pennsylvania still investing in this company? Because they are. Their retirement funds are invested in it. So what we're seeing right now is like lawyers, there are investors who are suing under SEC violations because they lied. And what we're doing is we're going to work with them because they're right. They did lie to everybody. There's a train coming, guys. This is perfect. And after that, we'll take questions, Karen. But I just had to do that. It's a freight train. This is a sinkhole-prone area, and this ground is unstable. And they are hauling some heavy stuff.
And there's the commuter train too. That I believe it has like 100 trips a day.
Yeah, 100 trips a day. So this is kind of a very scary situation to me. The risk is ridiculous. I don't even know what kind of a risk assessment they have done to not calculate how high of a risk without the geophysical studies being done. And as legislators, I would ask you to respect the science. If you are utilizing a new process or a new, technology, maybe not new, but new in this area, unprecedented, please don't use the public as guinea pigs to figure out if it works. I would prefer that, just like when we can't figure out what to do with the fracking waste, if you're going to make these processes, you work on to the grave. Meaning, where is your waste? From when it comes out of the bottle to when it goes to how it goes to bed. How do you deal with the waste, the byproducts? And also, how does an process, if you have a geology that's unique, why not do the geophysical testing if you have the money to do it? We have the resources, why are they not being utilized? So imagine what the people here feel like. We're not worth it. We're not worth that money. We're not worth that. So it's kind of funny to watch somebody put a price on your head, basically.
You want to talk about risk a little bit, about
the risk assessment real quick? Yeah.
So Delaware County Council,
real quick,
which I believe is one of the first times it was done by government, did their own risk assessment and figured out the blast zone or the explosion zone is roughly 1.25 miles all around this pipeline, and that's just one 20-inch pipe. And then when you add another pipe, you pretty much double the risk.
So that all of West Flatland Township, this township we're in, is at risk at all times because of the design of this pipe. So everybody
we're at risk of water contamination, we're at risk of explosion, we're at risk of air quality with flaring, with benzene put into the air, all kinds of toxic chemicals.
What happens? What are we supposed to do when there's a leak? What did they tell us? That if you see a leak, what do you look for, and what is the reaction that our government and the company told us to do?
See which way the wind's blowing, and then you run 1/2 mile upwind away.
Yeah.
So
and it looks like a white. It comes out because it's a liquid gas and it's cool. It comes out as a fog, a white fog that lays low to the ground and goes to lower areas. I live near a lake. There's a thing called lake effect. There's fog every night in the valleys. It's very paranoid. The trauma that has been created in this community is ridiculous. For when you do know, you cannot unknow. And most of the people here do not know because they do not have free, prior, informed consent. They have never been told of the risks. What kind of a government are we running if that's what happens? So, Karen, I'll give it back to you. I hope we
thank you.
Be able to do this. Never done a Zoom in the field. Yeah, there's a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Laura. And we are almost up to the 4 o'clock hour, but I do want to repeat something you just said there at the end. The advice you were given, the big plan that you were told, is to go upwind 1/2 mile on foot. That was your big escape route.
I know, I'm disabled.
Yeah, do not use your cell phone. You cannot call.
Doesn't consider disabilities.
Yeah. No spark. You cannot.
Age, disabilities.
Yeah.
So
don't ring that's what you can't ring your neighbor.
Exactly.
So that's what people have to understand about what's going on across the state now. It's everywhere. We want to thank everybody for spending 3 hours with us crossing the state. We're going to do more of these. We're going to have more testimonials from people. But since everybody was commenting on Ireland and people who are asking for help outside of the state, just one last word from you, PK and Laura, about what would you recommend to other people outside who are making decisions about fracking or looking for ways to stop getting Pennsylvania's fracked gas?
I will answer that. So I would stand up against, do not, you vote with your money. Do you want this? You don't want this to be a future. I know that as a community, we don't want this on somebody else, this to happen. And we are in between Marcellus Shale and the ports. So anybody outside of this country, for example, Ireland, which I love, I know you guys have been standing up, solidarity. Then if we're in between, we need to stand up for each other. Somehow we have to help. Like, don't accept this in your country. Don't accept this. Excuse my crap. It's crap. Just don't do it. It's poison. And for people out across the states, you guys have got it. If Pennsylvania is not banning fracking, help us ban it. Like, help us ban fracking. Don't take our pipelines. Fight them. Don't give them an avenue to transport this so it creates the demand, which they actually make so they can keep fracking. Just like our pipeline allows them to frack natural gas because they have nothing to do with the byproduct.
Is the plastic worth it?
Right. There's no plastic. Remember, the cracker plant's not open, guys. So Marion Reese is the way they're getting it out.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate it so much, especially being out in the field when a thunderstorm was approaching. But thanks to all of our speakers today. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of the legislators who attended. Thanks to all the staffers who attended and everybody from the public who took time out this afternoon. Again, we're the Better Path Coalition. We plan to bring you more of these tours, and we're happy to work with you. If you have questions, resources that you're looking for, just contact us at betterpathpa@gmail.com or look up our website, betterpathcoalition.org, and you'll see all the webinars that we've been hosting and are about to host. So thanks again for coming, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thanks a million.
Hi, everybody. Power to the people. Power to the
Bye, Dorothy. We'll do the best we can for you.
Yeah,
Bye. Take care.
Go get them.
Thank you, Verosaurus Rex.
Thank you from Massachusetts.
Ireland. United States. Ireland.
Rainiac and Verosaurus Rex. Do it again.
Thank you all.
There.
You're from Listowel, County Kerry, Ireland.
Thank you for joining.
Love Leitrim. I'm from Love Leitrim.
Safety before LNG.
It's nice to see you. Say hi to everyone there for us.
Yes, Ireland, don't buy that gas.
We're
about to become the first country in the world to ban the importation of US frack gas, and we're hoping that that's going to be a precedent for all of the countries to follow.
Go for it.
Working on that with Julia Walsh and others from this side who have been working hard on your side to try to get that done. So that's very exciting that you're getting so close, and you're so much more rational than we are here. So thank you.
I know we still have work to do, but we'll keep going. We're kind of pushing away at this time. It's critical time. So, we're there for you. We're trying our best.
Oh, I know you are.
We get through.
What time is it in Ireland right now?
It's not 9 p.m.
9:05.
All right.
Well, I know you probably all had to miss your dinner in order to be on this call then, if it's that time.
No, thank
Okay,
you.
No, but it is very exciting because we've got, for the first time ever, we've got every single political party in Ireland signed up to the banning of importation of fracked gas.
Hooray.
And that has really been motivated by the impact on the affected communities in Pennsylvania. Because, you might be far away geographically, but for us, you're very close to our hearts. And we do feel that we're very close to each other. So we were very close to having fracking coming into Ireland, but we've seen what's happened in America. And we're devastated by what we see. We just do not want to have any part of increasing your sacrifice zones for what's happening to you.
Thank you.
We thank you.
It's been your
testimony.
Your testimony really helped.
You're welcome
your
anytime.
Testimony, your testimony really helped us get our ban here. So we're there for you now. And we're going to try our hardest. I hope now that all these parties will come together and ratify this program for government. We can just keep pushing. Solidarity, and thank you for a wonderful presentation.
No, it's amazing the work you've done over there. Again, some of us, have had the good fortune of working with some of the people involved, like Julia Walsh, who has been working with a lot of your groups, so that she's a conduit for a lot of us. But, we've been watching closely and are very admiring.
Yeah. There's one thing that's happened as well, is that
there's a lot of feedback.
Somebody's got something going. There you go.
There we go.
Okay. Sorry, there's another thing that's very interesting, is that in July 2018, President Trump of America and President Jean-Claude Juncker of the European Commission, they made a deal in the White House that Europe would import American fracked gas, and that they would make it in the common interest. But Europe did it without assessing any of the climate impacts or any of the impacts on any impacts on the climate, on people's health, or on the environment outside of the European Union. And we felt that they really broke the law, even European law, but it was because trade was dominating over climate. And it was dressed up as bringing freedom gas to Europe. But we said, why should we be involved in something that isn't even assessing the climate impacts, when we know that 1/3 of the methane emissions worldwide increased over the last 10 years is coming from fracking in America with your 1.7 million wells. So we think that we can get 0.5 degree reduction in global temperatures if we only with methane reductions and CO2 emissions. We cannot do it without the methane reductions. So, you know, that's what our real motivation is for, was the impact on people's health. You know, what you're suffering personally, I mean, that's really distorting us. We find it very disturbing, but equally the impact on the climate and on the environment. And I think that when we get this ban through, we're going to break the concept that you can import liquefied frack gas from America and pretend, oh, it's just gas, it's cleaner than coal when we burn it. But now we want the Europeans to take on board the full life cycle emissions from wellhead to consumption, to take on board all the impacts. And I think for the first time we're getting through, because they use what we call the projects of common interest list in Europe, that makes these projects to be built in the common interest, so they can override all the environmental concerns if it's deemed to be in the national overriding public interest in each country. And there are 29 projects in Europe that are that can get up to 32 projects that are they have status that maybe gets them up to 50% funding from a total budget of 29 billion euros. So that's about $35 billion. And those companies could be, get grant aid for about 50% of that money. And equally in the Senate, they're pushing through a bill that for the exportation of liquid natural gas from America into Europe, that are on this project's a common interest list, they will also be able to get American funding to be built in our country. So it's trade, trade, trade over everything. And that's just a very dishonest way to do business. And so we're not, our campaign has nothing to do with being anti-American trade with America. We want that, but trade has to have a social justice, and it has to be just to everybody. And it's very disturbing what we're seeing. Now, for the first time, really, we're building up a consensus. We had half the Irish members of the European Parliament are voted in our favour. Half the Irish members of the Irish Parliament have signed a pledge that they will vote through a ban on the importation of American fracked gas. And now we have the final two parties that have signed up in a programme for government, but it has to be voted by each of the members. There are three parties. The three parties have agreed that they will ban, that they do not support the importation of fracked gas into Ireland via LNG terminals. And we know that we can bring in this ban on policy grounds alone. So we're just hoping that the Green Party, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they're the three parties, that their membership vote to support this programme for government. Because the minute they vote that in, it becomes official government policy. And that's why on all these grounds alone, for what you're showing us, that's so important. Because sometimes some of these battles are very theoretical and people do not see, they say, oh, but what's fracking? We don't have fracking in Ireland. We banned it in Ireland because of the testimony you have shown us over the years. But now it's like it's far away. So it's very important that we can bring this back and show the people here, to show that this is real, it's tangible, it's something that affects everybody. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
I just wanted to say as well, as Johnny said, it's a very kind of crucial time now. But thank you. Tammy has given us some little snippets of little videos, and we're trying to put that out on our social media channels. It's lovely, Trim. And at the moment now, I'd love to be able to share this, but I probably won't be able to do it. We're also doing little signage that, you know, we're trying to have a strap line that's saying now is the time to try and focus people's minds, the members, party members' minds, on where we feel is the is which is ye. So we'd love if you were able to do a little sign with now is the time. We're already going to be putting out of films, but if you're able to do that, just time. That's we've found before. When when we were kind of trying to promote the bill to ban fracking, that just simple signage, sometimes people's faces, people get moved by faces. So we're going to try that again. So if there was any way that you can send it to us, that'd be lovely. We're on Twitter. Yeah, look for Lovely Trum on Twitter. Not sure how I got. Oh, hang on. I wonder. See if I can get 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
Actually, I know how to reach you, so I can share that information out with everybody on this end. Yeah,
this is the kind of
Eddie. Good to see you again, buddy.
There you are.
That's the kind of thing.
Yep.
Just very simple, and once I know that where you're from, what parts of Pennsylvania, stuff like that, it'd be lovely just to get pictures like that. And I think that's the kind of thing. It's a direct reach out from where you are to where we are, and to them, because we're with you. We want to try and get to those people, to those members, and we want to get to the people in Kerry as well. So thank you for any help you might give us. Now, how do I close this again? I should know, but there, yes. Got it.
So I'm so grateful, but I haven't been to the bathroom for like 5 hours. So you guys can all keep talking if you want to. I actually really have to leave the screen right now, personally, though.
Eddie, good to see you again, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you see Eddie there, guys?
All right. Well,
you're muted, Eddie. Unmute yourself, buddy.
If you're all done, then I'm just going to turn off the. Andrea, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, hi. I've met Ray. I've met Vera. I was much blonder at the time. Hi, Vera. I came out with the Gas Leaks Allies others out front from Massachusetts. I did want to speak. I didn't plan on doing this, and I'm technically working from home here, but I did want to speak to the folks from Ireland about what we're dealing with here in Massachusetts. I've been in the chat sort of referring to people to knocompressor.com. What we have here is a project that we've been fighting for 5.5 years that would basically make a super highway from Pennsylvania through Massachusetts by, modernization, like making bigger pipes and pushing more gas to go north for export. And we've been really, like, our governor doesn't care. He won't listen to us. As we know, FERC is even more useless right now. But we would be, our town in Weymouth, we would be the only, or the first, it's Enbridge, it would be the very first compressor to just start sucking gas out of Pennsylvania for export. Like, we're not getting any of the gas. And since, when the fight goes on for so long, things change over time. But June 3rd, we had a really great court case that vacated the air permit, but FERC hasn't said anything, and the governor hasn't said anything, and they've been building this stupid thing all through the pandemic. They haven't taken any safety. Like, we're doing what PK is doing. We have people who are constantly monitoring them. But the thing is, I just wanted to kind of hook up with you guys, because we would be the mechanism by which exports would flow. You know what I mean? If the gas was able to be turned on. So knocompressor.com, you can look at that and see, but we're trying as hard as we can to stop this compressor. And there's still some fight left in us, but our governor could absolutely make a difference here. The states have power to say no to this, even though it's, FERC, likes to tell you what to do. We have a lot of Irish here on the South Shore. So I was just, wanted to say, hey, I'm not the director of it's Four River Residents Against the Compressor Station, and I'll put it in the chat. That's on Facebook. But I just wanted to say hey and thank you. And you guys are always in my hearts in Pennsylvania. I know it's been like a couple of years, but you really are. And I just want to say, hey, Craig, because you hadn't met me yet.
Hey, Andrea, bring a crew from Massachusetts down on July 21st. That'll be.
I know. Cool. I'm spreading the word. I am. Okay, I'll mute myself now.
And
well, just
we're
hi,
still friends.
Can you
man.
hear me?
Still love you, girl.
Yeah, Eddie.
Yeah, just it's lovely to see us all. This COVID makes it look like you're beside me now because we're getting so used to this, you know. But we've been, since I was talking to you a couple of months ago, we've made a lot of progress. And like Johnny was explaining it there, Johnny is he's our special weapon in Ireland. He's been fighting this for 14 years. But I don't want to go into the detail of that, but we're hopefully in the next week or the next week and a half, we'll get those Greens to go into power. They're taking a huge risk. If they go in and they can't succeed, then it'll destroy them. So they're taking a huge risk, and they're going into power, and they're going to ban fracking. We've already banned fracking, but they're going to ban frack gas exports. We know that our Taoiseach spoke at a parliamentary party meeting during the week and said that Ireland banned fracking, we're not having frack gas, you know. So we've got to that point now in Ireland where the Taoiseach is acknowledging that it's over, you know, that frack gas isn't going to come into Ireland. Like, you know, to be at that point is brilliant, but we still have to get the Greens into government to make this a reality. But hopefully we will.
We wish when you were here, Eddie, we wish that we had this win where the Attorney General's actually filed criminal complaints. It would have been a nice thing for you guys to take back, but we have it now. 9 felony counts and 6 misdemeanor charges, and they have to go to court. So we're gonna, and that's just the beginning. We heard there's 2 more presentments coming, and they're also giving orders from the grand jury to the governor's office, the legislature, and the DEP. They're going to give recommendations from the grand jury. So having you guys here, I mean, it's a great connection. You know, my grandmother's from, our family's from Ireland, and I've got the Brennan family in my family. So just to you guys, we're with you all the way. We'll help you stop it. And just tell everyone in Europe to stop using gas from other places because people are getting harmed. And we appreciate you guys showing up and spending time in the community. It was great to see you.
What we have to be able to say to you is that we don't want to be involved in poisoning people in Pennsylvania, you know.
Thank you.
And that's the message in Ireland that's important. And people get that here, you know. So you're going to see that spread through Europe, hopefully. You know?
Thank you.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I just want to keep
good.
reminding people.
Ray, how are you?
Ray,
I'm
you muted,
Eddie.
Oh, good.
Yeah, can you hear me? Greg, can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up, man. Everyone can hear you.
All right. Well, you want me to yell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're used to.
Eddie,
Don't speak softly one or you're in there.
What can I say? I'm here. I'm ready to come up to Ireland, Eddie. So just get me the ticket, man. I'll be there.
Oh, it'd be great, Ray, if we could have you here. It'd be great. We have to see what happens.
Like I said, yep. Get me there, man. I might not leave.
When we're finished banning fracked imports, we're not going to stop. We're going to continue, and we're going to look for a global ban.
Hi again.
So that we have to keep this partnership going. You know, just because we win doesn't mean that we go away. You know, we're not going anywhere.
No, I mean, because in the movie we showed everything where they're doing the liquefaction, the export, and everything else. So I mean, we got to get those export terminals shut down, the shipping shut down. I mean, we still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Thanks,
we're getting good at it, though.
Well, thanks, everyone. At 63, my brain is not the boss of me. Other organs take over. But anyway, I do apologize for having to step away. No lack of interest, believe me. So again, thanks for, I'm going to try to capture everything in the chat before I stop the webinar entirely so that we can share addresses and all of that. But I think I know enough of you and reach you that I can probably do it if, either way. But I will send it out to everybody who had registered for today. So everybody who has this link was registered. You'll all get the email with all the information. Craig, do you want to say something?
Yeah, Karen, I just wanted everyone that's left on the call to know how much work Karen put into this. I mean, we all worked on it, but she just killed it. Karen, this was so awesome. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near this good, and it was outstanding. I think we blew the doors off the legislators that watched this. They went, oh my God. And so I'm telling you right now, Chris Rabb, it sounds like you bring a busload of people down. I would love that, or up, and we want to get them to come down to Southwestern PA too.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate that. Everybody just killed it. I thought everybody came loaded with beer, so ready to go. And so I appreciate it. Everybody was excellent, and like you said, Craig, I think the legislators got a real earful today. So with any luck.
Carolyn Cometa's assistant Julia just sent Loving just sent a thank you to you and I, Karen. They said it was amazing, and I mean, I think we're gonna get real good kudos from the elected officials that watch this. So I think that was the most important part. And to have all you guys here and Vera and Ray, that was so fun. It was like watching a wrestling match tag team. It was like great back and forth. It was so much fun.
Well, I think the other thing that's useful, and I'm praying anyway that it is that we got 20 legislators and staffers, including people we actually had somebody from the SRBC on, Barb.
Who was it? Who was the person?
I don't know the name.
I didn't mention Toddy by name, so I mean, it is true that they don't turn down.
They're terrible. No, they're terrible.
You know they were watching this.
I did not say anything that's not true.
So that's the Susquehanna River Basin Commission that was on, that Barb had alluded to in her, pointed to very directly in her presentation.
I did.
And then we also had somebody from the Pennsylvania House Appropriations Committee, in addition to staffers and the legislators they work with. And so all told, it was probably about 20 elected officials. And I think my point was going to be that I think that every time we do these things, when we did the in-person ones and now that we've done this virtual one, I guess it gets other legislators telling their legislative friends, their colleagues, that they need to get on this tour and see, because so many of them. Pennsylvania is a big state. If you're not from here, you might not gather that it takes like 5 or 6 hours to cross the state from end to end. And so a lot of legislators from Eastern Pennsylvania have never gone north, as you guys pointed out from Dimick, but they've definitely never gone to the Southwest to see all the impacts there, where the petrochemical boom has been taking off now. So, getting them to go do these things and see it firsthand, to see what they're legislating about, has been, I hope anyway, a benefit that, they're not able to ignore it anymore. So
when you get the recording done, Karen, we're going to blast it out, but the Irish people can use it. But I'll tell you what, Cabot will be watching their boardroom as soon as you get it out, because Ray knows what to tell them. Yeah, that one.
but we're all with you in Ireland, and your 2/3 vote that you need coming up. I know that's a big thing, so we're going to hold up our signs and do everything we can to support you, because you're supporting us, and we really appreciate that. We need more of that here. Ray, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just remember something. Cabot's bad. Cabot's not good. We'll destroy Cabot where they stood.
All right. Well, again, thank you, everyone, and again, have a great rest of the day, and please stay in touch. We're going to do more of these. We're going to do testimonials from people around the state. So pay attention to when we're doing more of them. Maybe some of you would like to be speaking, about what it's like being, on the other end of all of this. And we might try to do one that's sort of focused that way too, to help people in other states and other countries. So, all right. Well, thanks again.
Karen, thank you, Karen.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
So much. Good night, Ireland. I hope you understand our accents.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Mind yourselves. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
God bless. Take care.
Bye-bye.